He kicked things off with a vision of chaos, as a young girl named Yutia with her hair flowing stands amidst a powerful magical surge, while our black-haired count's son, Alon Palatio, and the Sin children are shown in a composition of impending doom, all because of the 5 great sins, and a figure named Deus Macalian strikes with a glowing blue spear, leading to an intense beam of light that strikes the ground, causing a massive explosion. The world as they know it will fall, as the ground shatters and crumbles into darkness in a massive cataclysm. Alon Palatio sits at his desk reading a document, worried about how to prevent this future disaster, and explains that he has become the patron to those very Sin children. Now our reluctant patron sits back at his desk, looking stressed as he rests his chin on his hands, admitting he wasn't expecting this plan to become such a big deal. Flashback to earlier, as Alon settles into his new life in the Palatio mansion, where he recalls his past as a wage slave, working 78-hour weeks, and now he's trying to read a book, wondering, shouldn't I just automatically know the language? Only for a servant to point out that he's holding it upside down. He's clearly still adjusting to noble life, like when he's surprised by a table filled with food, and then happily announces, "That was good," after finishing his meal. Later, he's being pampered in a luxurious bath, startled by a sudden touch, but quickly settles in, declaring, "This is the life." As a maid cleans his face with a towel, our transmigrated noble still looks a little confused by it all. The maid questions him, asking, "Why do you speak as if you don't know your own family?" And Alon, dazed, can only reply, "Huh, Palatio." He dunks his head underwater, the name sounding ominously familiar as the maid gasps, "Young master." Submerged, our young master stares wide-eyed as the realization hits him. Reflects on the game title Psychedelia, clutching his console, screaming internally, "Wait, am I in Psychedelia?" Our ex-wage slave sits in the dark, playing his handheld, distressed to realize he's in a turn-based RPG, a game he used to play whenever he had the time. But the thing is, no matter which route you take, the moment the 5 great sins appear, everything, the kingdom, nobility, and cities, starts to enter its downfall. Among those doomed factions, the Palatio house, which includes Alon's father and his brothers Leo and Tonio, is a noble family of troublemakers. He kneels on the floor, defeated, remembering they are part of a subquest before the main episode begins. In the game, his own character used to comment, "This estate has an ominous vibe to it. Should I go in?" But now he's living it, lamenting, "Are you kidding me right now? The Palatios are the first to be wrecked by the 5 great sins." He looks up with a despondent expression, at least remembering that the subquests here gave a lot of experience. Standing straight in the dark, he clutches a small blue flower, pleading for a way out. He lies back, eyes closed, crying, thinking, "This is worse than 6 months of unpaid wages." In a close-up, he cries, wondering, "How come I possessed a fantasy character with no powers? The other guys get all kinds of things." Still holding the flower, our young master sits on the floor, thinking. Looking distressed, he holds more flowers, devising a plan. He decides to reform the 5 great sins for the sake of his peaceful, noble life, wondering if it's possible since they're still kids, even if our black-haired count's son himself has 0 powers. Alon then sits at his desk, beginning to put his plan into motion. Soon, his knight, Evan, stands before him, reporting on a girl named Yutia rescued from an orphanage. Evan confidently states that Yutia is skilled, a fact our protagonist already knows. Our loyal knight tilts his head in confusion, observing Alon. Alon tries to put on a grotesquely forced smile, saying, "Look forward to continuing to work with you," but then catches himself. I don't think I'll." He practices his forced smile in a hand mirror, unaware that Evan is watching, and a voice notes that Alon used to be really obvious with his emotions. Evan smiles sheepishly, saying, "The praise, young master," knowing that Evan is a rare character in Psychedelia. Reflects with his hand on his chin, confirming his assessment of Yutia with a simple yes. Evan looks serious and pensive as he speaks about Yutia, explaining, "Even in my eyes as someone who worked a long time as a mercenary, she was no ordinary kid." He remembers Yutia, chained in a dark, underground facility with other orphans. She glows with a faint, magical aura, strong enough that Evan didn't understand why she just gave in to being locked up. Alon listens intently, as Evan gestures to his head, giving his full report. Close-up of Alon's thoughtful face shows him processing the information. He knows Yutia is a non-human who signs a contract with an otherworldly being for its powers, destined to become the wrath of the 5 great sins. She would go on to kill hundreds of thousands of people, but he believes she shouldn't become wrath if she grows up in peace. Alon punches his fist into his palm with a satisfied look, declaring, "I finally took care of one landmine." He then looks at Evan and says, "Well, you know," only for Evan to question him with a raised eyebrow. Alon rests his chin on his hands, observing Evan, stating, "It's not yet time." He leans forward, looking serious, reaffirming, "It's not yet." Evan, now wearing an eye patch, silently acknowledges Alon's words. Alon hands Evan a letter, addressing him directly. "Yutia." He looks up at Evan, handing him the sealed letter, explaining, "I figured I should reassure her somehow since she's been through a lot." Evan then rides away from the mansion, as Alon watches from a window. Our young master looks out the window at Evan riding away on horseback, hoping that really will reassure her. It's at least worth a try. He flashes back to the game, where the Archbishop tried to use a spell to calm Yutia, saying, "This is a spell that will let one befriend a non-human like you. It should calm you." Sin of wrath, calm thyself, agony of the dark, impassivity of the bright, belonging with the fall. But in the game, the Archbishop's words were just quotes Alon had heard dozens of times during the story progression of the Sin of Wrath. Yutia is surrounded by dark magical energy under a red moon, her power growing. A surge of bloody magic erupts around her. Her magic goes out of control as we see a close-up on her face. With red glowing eyes surrounded by blood-like magic, Yutia declares, "It's too late." In the game, the attempts to calm her always fail and the battle begins. Back in his own time, our overworked office worker stretches and yawns, silhouetted against a bright window, clearly still not quite used to the noble life. A drop of sweat on his cheek shows he's a little concerned despite his calm demeanor. Leaning back and looking thoughtfully to the side, Alon admits, "It's hard to fathom the way those guys think." Meanwhile, Yutia stands alone, looking down at the piece of paper from Alon, surrounded by light. Close-up on Evan's eye-patch-covered eye shows his surprise at Yusha's immense power. He senses an unbelievable lack of emotion from her, describing her as a strange child. Tall figure in a dark robe looks down toward Yutia, observing the rising power. Evan, startled, asks, "You said Mr. Allen was the one who sent this letter?" Yutia, surrounded by a swirling aura of red magical energy, gazes upward, wondering, why didn't he want me by his side? Evan looks upward in visible distress, holding the letter, pressured by her immense magic, stammering, "What? Because." Her intense red eye glares as magical energy flows, and Evan realizes that manifesting mana in this form is only possible in the Master Realm, knowing it's not yet time for such power. Evan faces Yutia, cloaked in red magical energy, and simply says, "I see." But then Yutia smiles warmly, clutching the letter to her chest, whispering words from the game's past. "Do not forget, agony of the dark, impassivity of the bright, belonging with the fall." Evan looks troubled, holding the letter as magical energy surges around him, understanding, this is a promise that only Master would know. "I get it." Yutia stands gracefully, looking forward with a dark, determined expression, confirming, "I get what he means." Back in his own bed, Alon sits up, looking tired, content that he's managed to extend his luxurious lifespan a bit. He looks at the moon through his window, feeling optimistic, thinking, "Even the bright moon is cheering me on. I'll work hard on the next kid as well." Our young master then sleeps peacefully, tucked under his blanket. Chibai Alon sits on his bed looking sad, holding a small blue object, recalling that the Asteria Kingdom has a tradition of placing primrose flowers on wounds or old scars of the deceased during funerals, and he just wants to live a long life of luxury. As our overworked office worker turned noble searches through the library for clues about the next villain child, a stack of books decides to ambush him from above, and he can't help but groan about his headache, wondering if the information he needs isn't here after all. Just then, a voice asks if he's treating the child very kindly, and suddenly, a flash of light erupts as Tonio Palatio appears, grinning down at our strategic survivor with that usual arrogant smirk. Tonio makes it clear that he finds his little brother nothing but a bother, pinning him to the floor like a bug under a thumb and demanding a bow, while Alon, on the ground, can only stew about how the original Allen put up with this. Tonio physically forces Alon's head down, then takes it a step further, literally stepping on his head like he's nothing more than a doormat. A knife embedded in the wall behind them shows just how tense things are. Luckily for our black-haired Count's son, help arrives in the form of his other brother, Leo Palatio, who dismissively tells Tonio, "I don't want to see blood first thing in the morning, so GET lost." The two siblings face off, with Leo chastising Tonio for reeking of drugs and having a shallow attitude in the library. A reluctant patron just sees a game interface overlay warning him about the Palatio County's criminal activities, thinking about how his scummy brothers are fighting over the family head position, with Leo as the prostitution king and Tonio as the drug king, surrounded by his illegal supplies. Their sibling rivalry quickly escalates into a massive magical shockwave, destroying the entire library, and Alon is pulled to safety just in time, like a rag doll caught in a blast. He flops onto a couch, utterly exhausted and possibly terrified, like a dropped sack of potatoes. His loyal knight Evan observes him with a thoughtful expression, wondering how someone like Alon could possibly know about secret slave markets and bioexperiments in other regions. Our strategic survivor just groans about being tired, while Evan, still puzzled, takes in his master's state. Alon, still resting, remembers Evan's previous assessment that the child didn't seem ordinary, but Alon knows he's of catastrophic scale, the second boss of psychedelia, Deus Macalian, from the Kalyan Kingdom. Flashback shows young Deus inside a cage, abused and sold into slavery from place to place, until he became the embodiment of one of the 5 deadly sins, the sin of sloth. This young man later annihilated kingdoms in the most horrific ways imaginable, a part of the story where many players were genuinely surprised by the game's cruelty. Our black-haired Count's son knows that despite his title, Deus was incredibly hardworking, repaying debts and disservices several times over, which is why Alon explicitly told Evan to treat Deus very kindly. Alon, holding a teacup, continues thinking about Deus, and we jump to a scene of a young boy standing alone, enveloped in light. Voice addresses Deus, telling him, "You're broken," as the boy stands dejectedly and a scarred hand twitches, observing traces of that. Deus looks up and asks if it was. It was the black goat, wasn't it? And a white-haired woman with red eyes stands before him, smiling as she congratulates him, saying the great moon has chosen him. He tells him to feel the power bestowed upon him and unleash his potential, gesturing as pink magical ribbons flow around them. The woman reaches out her hand, promising him revenge if he stays loyal and follows their order, as dark magical energy engulfs the young Deus. She then prepares to send her first reply, a hand holding a letter addressed to Yutia under the moon. Back in his library, our reluctant patron is still distressed, asking where the third boss is, when he's suddenly alerted to big trouble. His attendant, a man with an eye patch, looks worried as he reports that Tonio Palatio is dead. Alon looks up in shock as someone questions in disbelief, "That scum is dead." Tonio lies dead on the ground, surrounded by mysterious magical purple ropes, and another voice asks, "Already?" And a funeral gathering is held for him. Our black-haired count's son observes his father, Aldemar Palatio, at the funeral, bringing drugs and women, expressing his boredom and hunger, confirming Alon's disgust at his messed-up family. He notes that Tonio's death by accidental fall is different from what he remembers in the game. A shadowy figure gloats about finally killing the vermin after 50 years. "I finally killed that vermin after 50 many years. Now I'm the rightful heir. I'm now Count Palati," and claiming the rightful heirship to the Palatio County. A year later, with the succession problem solved and Leo absorbing the drug business, the county ironically became even more peaceful, on the surface at least. Our strategic survivor sits and eats sweets while reading a letter, noting that keeping in touch with Yutia is proving helpful as she reports on Yuna, Hidden, and Deus, who is growing without trouble and likes puppeteering. Evan then points out how interesting it is that more sponsorships are appearing for that small orphanage, with a sponsor list included in the letter. Alon is relieved to hear it, and finally, he finds what he's been searching for, an ancient book about the third boss. He is excited to finally track down that guy as well. But elsewhere, at a drug distribution site, chaos erupts as a shadowy figure collapses. Two figures walk down a street at night, with one tossing a cube, watching as people fall, and a man in dark uniform looks confused. Cloaked character uses magic to control a sword, making a man gasp in pain and stab himself with his own blade. Cloaked figure declares, "I enjoyed the puppet show," while a masked character with magical threads notes there's more to report. Glowing purple threads manipulate the scene as men are forced to hold swords against their own throats, screaming in terror that their hands are moving on their own. Alon and the white-haired woman stand on the dark street full of bodies, and she asks if he pities them. Our information broker replies that he doesn't, because they grind people to create drugs, but questions if this has anything to do with his revenge. The white-haired woman conjures more magical threads, explaining that this helps create space for him to return, and they can't let the place be shabby when he arrives, to which Alon simply understands. Magical energy erupts from the debris-filled street. Our black-haired count's son returns to the Grand Palatio mansion, puzzled about where his loyal knight Evan has gotten to, only to find him face down in the garden, giving a thumbs up and clearly enjoying himself. Alon watches Evan devour macarons like his life depends on it, and reflects on how much smoother his mission has been now that he's got Evan working with his game knowledge, even if it means Evan is catching flying pastries midair. Evan, ever the subtle one, asks if Alon's relief is because he's finally found the sin of greed, which our reluctant patron can only confirm with a thoughtful, "What a relief," as he contemplates his surprisingly easy progress. Things are going better than he ever could have expected, and he can't help but wonder if this is all a dream. Even a chibi version of Alon's inner thoughts looks surprised by his good fortune. Stretching out under the sun, Alon admits he truly didn't expect things to go so smoothly, considering the future 5 sins were once the brutal bosses of psychedelia, forged from horrid pasts, and he was genuinely worried he'd only rescue them after they'd already been broken. Evan hands him a letter asking about the orphanage, and Alon reflects that the children, once looking like broken dolls, have brightened considerably, all thanks to Yutia. He's amazed at how well Yutia is doing, thinking her background must make her sentimental towards the orphanage. And Evan confirms that everyone is okay, with a few kids growing particularly well, telling our overthinking noble not to worry about Deus or any of the others. Evan says that seeing how well they're growing just proves that environment is the most important thing. But then he leans in to ask about a future meeting, and Alon quickly clarifies that he doesn't plan on ever meeting them. He thinks it'd be nice to stay close, but their in-game personalities aren't exactly ones he'd want to be around, still scared by how brutal they became as sins, even if he rescued them early. He considers 5 years, then decides he needs to train himself to survive in this dark fantasy world. Alon conjures a glowing orb of magical energy, declaring he needs skills to protect himself, and as he channels power, he notes his body is perfect for magic and asks Evan if he's heard of the blue moon. Evan watches intently, surrounded by swirling energy, as Alon explains the blue moon is a new organization gaining power. Alon confidently dismisses them, saying they'll be gone soon, but Evan looks shocked, sticking his tongue out and informing Alon that they even kill nobles. Our unintentional villain floats slightly, emitting magical energy as Evan watches in disbelief. Later, in a dimly lit chamber, the mysterious organization carries out its grim work. A young girl with white hair asks about the North, while another, a girl with blonde hair and animal ears, smiles, rubbing her eye. This is Xiaoreng, who winks, proclaiming she brought back all the slave traders' heads. Xiaoreng flips through the air, complimenting someone's clothes, as Rin, the bookish sin of greed, calmly states that the corpses were melted. She looks toward Raiden, who sits on the steps, smiling menacingly, as he reports taking care of the illegal human testing grounds and the Avalon bastards causing trouble. With glowing blue eyes, Raiden embodies the Pirate King. An unknown, red-eyed character smiles under the moonlit sky, declaring all things will go according to his will, as Yutia, Rin, Raiden, and Alon stand together, stating they exist for the sake of the Great Moon. However, Alon tells Yutia they have a problem, but Yutia questions what could be wrong when all is perfect under his will. Alon holds a piece of paper, explaining that the head of Avalon is the eldest son of the Count family where he resides, and he found a dangerous written order while cleaning up the South. Yutia reacts with intense shock, her red eyes glowing. Alon reveals the message. After the Count dies, slowly poison him to kill him. Yutia clenches her fist, radiating a powerful aura. 2 years later, Alon stands at his father's funeral in a cathedral, with the deceased Count Alon Palatio lying in his coffin, his death publicly attributed to heart failure. Alon stares at the coffin, grimly confirming it was actually an overdose. 2 men discuss how the blue moon seems to have become more wary. One mentions they attacked last night, and everyone was wiped out again. Alon and a knight walk past the open coffin, as a man in a coat watches them leave through a grand arched doorway, contemplating the situation. Alon kneels packing suitcases while Evan watches in confusion, asking what all the bags are for, and Alon's response leaves Evan stunned. Alon tells Evan they're not completely going down, but they're leaving. Carriage waits outside the grand building, ready for their departure. Alon thoughtfully looks out from a balcony, then flips food in a frying pan as he cooks in the kitchen. He holds a plate of food, while Evan dances happily in the background. Alon and Evan walk towards the carriage, with Alon explaining he's been planning to leave for a small town. But he soon returns, shocked to find himself at yet another funeral, this time for his brother. A reluctant patron looks distressed in the formal setting, staring down at the deceased brother, realizing he was stabbed. He wonders who could have killed him. Alon turns sharply, causing a terrified attendee to recoil in fear, as a panicked knight bows apologetically. Alon, confused and concerned, asks what's wrong with everyone. Evan walks towards him, and Alon asks quietly if anything has come out about the murder. Evan whispers that it happened overnight, leaving Alon with a serious, contemplative expression. Not long ago, on the day our black-haired Count's son left for Rodmil, he and Evan rode in a carriage, Alon declaring Rodmil his final destination. His plan, save the 5 great sins from misfortune, and stop the world from ruin. He envisions a peaceful picnic with the children, a life free from conflict. Rodmil, a town unrelated to the original story and home to a Palatio villa, seems perfect for a noble like him, a place where he can finally relax and do absolutely nothing. Evan watches Alon, noting that everything has a reason, perhaps hinting at the chaos to come. Meanwhile, a man with an eye patch looks on, surprised by Alon's swift departure. From his balcony, Alon's older brother, Leo, watches the carriage, contemplating if he should kill Alon, but decides it doesn't matter since he planned to poison him after their father's death anyway. Leo considers that Alon heading quietly to the border means he's lost all reason to kill him now. He wonders if it's because matters with Avalon aren't going well, then simply sighs. Leo calls for his subordinate Alman to follow Alon, but Alman, who has never talked back, asks a question instead, leaving Leo staring in shock. Leo dismisses his concerns with a frustrated laugh, only to be stabbed in the chest from behind. He stares in shock as Alman holds a sword through him, asking how he dares betray him. Alman, standing under the moon, coldly states that playing war was fun until now, his sword gleaming. He explains that as the blue moon is that man's sword, it's only natural he moves according to his wishes. But if anyone tries to harm the great moon, he can act on his own accord. Leo, clutching his chest, can only utter a choked retort. He collapses as Alman watches him fall, his face serious. Alman states that the great moon gave Leo a chance. Then Leo slumps forward, dead. Back in Rodmil, after Alon's arrival, our retiring patron wakes up and stretches, wishing himself a good morning. He enjoys a peaceful day, waking when he wants, and eating what he wants, with Evan joining him for toast. Alon is finally living the life of a true noble, even wondering if he should open a toast stand. But his free trial of heaven is about to expire as Evan holds up a letter. The letter is opened, and with it, our hero's peaceful 4 days come to an end as he stands in another funeral hall. He's confused by the staff's trembling, fearful reactions. A man with an eye patch touches his shoulder, and Alon, startled, looks on. The man sits with him, and Alon stares ahead with existential dread, demanding to know why he is the villain. The man with the eye patch looks concerned, as Alon is overwhelmed by the news. The man explains that with Leo's death, nothing will bother Alon now, making a dramatic gesture and asking if he's having fun. Alon sits slumped, looking utterly exhausted. The man explains that the blue moon leaves behind a mark instead of a corpse, but members of Avalon were stabbed with a sword, declaring that the road to hell has officially opened. Alon looks down with a serious and focused expression. Meanwhile, a young girl with long silver hair stands in a dim room with two others. Girl with long green hair, and a dress reveals that nothing was left behind of their targets. A hand grips a sword hilt. A young beastkin girl with cat-like ears smiles, holding a blade and adding that there were only corpses. Swirling magical energy illuminates several blades. As the report comes in, 486 soldiers of Avalon remain. A young character with glowing wings of energy stands ready, while another with light hair and a glowing blade proudly states that he cut them all in half. Cloaked figure listens intently, and a young woman with long light hair and red glowing eyes smiles mischievously. Destroyed building lies in ruins, with swords stuck in the ground near fallen figures, evidence of the blue moon's brutal efficiency. The white-haired girl confronts a silver-haired man in a dark room. The silver-haired man holds a document, indicating the Altia dukedom has a particularly deep connection. A lone figure stands in the snow, and Yutia, clutching a document, confronts someone, knowing they already know what she's going to say. Three figures stand with glowing auras, ready to take care of this quietly. Silver-haired knight with a large sword stands in a blue glowing aura. Rodmil is just a warm village with a mild climate all year round, unaware of the darkness Alon has unintentionally brought with him. Right after our black-haired count's son settled into his new role, his blue moon children were already on the move, with a pink-haired girl looking distressed as she admitted she already knew what was coming, while a silver-haired young man stood ready with a large blade over his shoulder. The pink-haired girl then closed her eyes, letting out a heavy sigh of acceptance. She held a clipboard, appearing to brief another green-haired girl holding a book, as more of their shadowy organization gathered around papers. A reluctant patron found himself surrounded by floating documents and his adopted children, as Yutia sternly warned them, saying, "This matter must not reach the ears of that person." She repeated that they already knew the rules, before Alon then directly instructed the children, reminding them, "We are swords." Yutia reflected that a sword must not think for itself, and Blue Moon must only move on orders. Lon then reinforced her thought, adding, "That person knows everything. Never disappoint him." Our black-haired count's son couldn't understand Yusha's anxiety, wondering why someone with her overwhelming abilities would be so restless about being found out, and he gripped a document tightly, concerned. The ominous message, "Everything for the Great Moon," hung heavy in the air, underscoring the powerful forces at play. Back in his office, our overworked manager was buried under endless piles of paperwork, crying out for it to stop. After a full month of duties that left him utterly exhausted, he stared intensely at another document, then looked up to see more men entering, carrying even larger stacks of books and files. He wondered why everyone was working so hard when they used to slack off under the previous count, while his cowering subordinates feared his intense focus, whispering that he must be angry and they had to work harder because they didn't want to die. Still trapped at his desk, our reluctant patron lamented that his former slave self, who just wanted a quiet life, wished they would manage things without him having to step in. He then flashed back to a scene with Deus Michaelian, where meat roasted over a fire. Magic crackled around them as Deus expressed shock at Alon reaching the second tier in poisoncraft after only 2 years of self-study, marveling at how much talent he had. Our mana-starved sorcerer then reflected on how hard he'd practiced for self-defense, driven by a constant unease. He knew to do that, he had to be able to finally control his mana, but despite using every kind of magic in this fantasy world, he realized what good it was if it was only half-baked. At first it was exciting, but his mana haul, he lamented, was insanely tiny, like trying to fill a thimble from a waterfall, an athlete's natural weight class that no amount of training could ever cover. Later, by the fireplace, our black-haired count's son had a sudden realization, exclaiming to Evan that his invitation had arrived. He looked up from the letter, a questioning expression on his face. Soon, Alon and Evan entered a crowded aristocratic ball in the southern Asteria kingdom, a networking event for nobles. Our aspiring socialite hoped to use this chance to mingle, as couples danced around him. He prepared his expression, thinking this was his chance to network. But as they walked into the ballroom, the noble guests scattered, fleeing from him like he was a tax collector at a feast. Evan asked if he was upset, to which Alon calmly replied, "Not at all." Alon waved goodbye to Evan, internally monologuing that he knew they looked down on him for being low-class and lacking refinement, but he wasn't here thoughtlessly, having a secret social skill to unlock. He picked up a glass of wine, ready to put his plan into action. He approached a female noble, commenting on the wine's unique aroma. He then stared intensely at her, adding, "Especially the scent. It's distinctive. I'd like to have a few bottles at home." He considered his unnerving, wide smile an essential social tool. The noble guest looked terrified and quickly ran away, promising to tell her father to prepare at once, as Alon watched, confused by the unexpected reaction. Onlookers gossiped, asking if he had just blackmailed her into giving him limited edition regional wine, calling him a bigger troublemaker than his siblings. As Alon, dejected, offered a denial. Another Palladian luxury wine was added to his growing loot pile. Our aspiring socialite stood next to a companion eating sweets, depressed that he now had quite a list of expensive wines. He sighed against a wall, lamenting that the rumor of him removing his monstrous brothers had spread, effectively ruining his social life and making nobles avoid him even more. Evan suggested getting some fresh air, and Alon, agreeing, stepped out onto a balcony, watched by a noble woman. He stood under the night sky, deep in thought, looking out over the grounds. He suddenly turned his head in surprise, hearing someone speak to him. He wondered who it could be, looking confused as he observed the speaker. It was Loria, the third daughter of Duke Altia. Our black-haired count's son politely greeted her, but internally realized she couldn't be a normal person, given her powerful aura. He then wondered why he didn't remember this girl from the game. Loria bluntly asked for his strength, saying, "Please lend me your strength." She urgently reached out, touching his attire in the dimly lit balcony. She then added the shocking reason. She was to be assassinated soon. Alon stood with the girl on the balcony, leaving our black-haired count's son to process this sudden and urgent request, probably while mumbling about his social skill book. Our perpetually weary lord finds himself on a balcony, face-to-face with a young girl who looks utterly distressed, and he asks her flat out, "So, it's a mutual downfall situation, huh?" But she just shakes her head, declining his grim assessment. He then turns away, letting her know he's taking his leave. Internally, he sympathizes with her plight, but knows he can barely take care of himself right now. So he thinks it's better not to give her any false hope, leaving the dejected girl alone. He's not the powerful figure the rumors claim, and can only offer her his best wishes as he walks away. Meanwhile, Alon moves through a bustling ballroom, unaware that two cloaked figures are already discussing how Altia has approached the Great Moon, and suggesting they pass her kind wishes along to the Red Moon. These figures stand on a high balcony, observing the girl in green below, and noting that she's the only Altia not tied to Avalon, which makes her the only one safe from Raiden's targets. This simplifies things for them, they conclude, as the rest of the Altias will be dealt with according to the Red Moon's command, and they'll focus on blocking any information about the Avalon case from reaching their leader. A game-savvy noble, still lost in thought, moves through the ballroom, oblivious to the shadowy machinations unfolding above him, when a mysterious woman in a striking red gown and holding a fan approaches from behind, breaking his pensive mood with a simple hello. He's surprised, wondering if that greeting was actually meant for him, and if, just maybe, he could finally socialize with some normal nobles for once. But then he instantly recognizes her face from the game, realizing he's stumbled upon yet another shadow player, and sighs to himself that, of course, no one would approach him first unless they were trouble. He stares at the woman, his mind racing through the lore he knows. He remembers that the Asteria Kingdom has three great shadow players: Altia of the north, Palatio of the east, and then there's Zenonia, the troublemaker of the west, embodied by the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Callia, who sits on a grand throne, wondering aloud if she's really that famous. While House Palatio might run a gang, Zenonia is more like a smartly run criminal syndicate, and our reluctant manager desperately thinks about how he needs useful connections to maintain a peaceful, noble life. Even though things are already half falling apart, he vows never to get involved with her if he wants to keep his easy life. Callia, however, smiles coyly and says, "Oh, my, thank you," her eyes hinting at mischief. He suggests they talk more, but Alon, trying to politely escape, insists there are too many eyes on them right now, adding, "Please, just let me go quietly." She simply smiles unfazed, as she looks back at him and asks, "You again?" He responds with a confused "huh," before she walks away through the crowded ballroom, leaving him to wonder what she meant. Our black-haired count's son stands thoughtfully, holding a glass of wine, unaware that a hooded spy is observing him, reporting that the Avalon case information is well contained, but there's a new concern. Someone is still keeping watch on him. Alon notices the tale and remarks that they're being watched, but the cloaked figure, who just jumped away after being spotted, has orders to keep watching and then eliminate them. Later, he finds himself in a mysterious canyon under a dome-like magical barrier, and Evan asks if this is really the place he was looking for. Alon's face lights up with realization as he declares, "Finally found it. Am I real objective? The terrain effects match perfectly. This is definitely IT." As they walk through a stone corridor covered in glowing blue runic symbols, Alon half jokes that if this turns out to be empty again, he might cry, but Evan assures him this time it's real. A diagram of the labyrinth of whispers appears, detailing its 8 connected rooms, and Alon, confident in his game knowledge, announces he's memorized all the routes and puzzles, ready to put his grinding skills to use against the ancient stone walls covered in glowing blue runes. He stares at the labyrinth entrance, reflecting on how different it feels to see it in real life, even though he's run this dungeon countless times in the game, while Evan casually mentions he's come here often himself. Our game-savvy noble looks utterly puzzled by this revelation. He snaps out of his thoughts, realizing he's spaced out, saying, Damn, I spaced out. He then gives Evan a mischievous smile, saying he's just kidding and that he has his ways, but Evan implores him not to joke with such things as they head inside. Suddenly, a large stone claw slams down, creating debris, and Evan groans, explaining that if you get the riddles wrong, those things slam down mercilessly. But Alon simply observes, unfazed. Evan watches the trap mechanism with concern, while Alon calmly interacts with a stone puzzle. Evan, utterly puzzled, wonders how his young master can stay so calm in a situation like this, reflecting on how they've worked together for 4 years. Yet he still doesn't understand him or his missions that seem to have no pattern, from helping slaves to delivering meaningless messages. He marvels that our magic crafter has barely left the estate, yet seems to know everything about this place, as Alon announces that he got it right. But the door only opens once the mechanism finishes. Evan wonders what exactly he's planning this time as Alon notes the door is opening. But our perpetually weary lord reacts grimly to the scene inside, saying he knew it would be cruel, but seeing it firsthand makes him want to puke. Evan looks surprised at the intensity of Alon's reaction. The newly revealed room is filled with piles of shining gold and treasures, and both Alon and Evan stand before it, taking in the glittering hoard. Alon, looking tired, stares blankly at the riches. He examines a disembodied hand wearing several rings, eventually inspecting a particular ring, finding it a little big, as Evan, who is busy holding gold bars, asks if he's taking anything. Alon, holding up a metallic coin-like object, triumphantly declares, "I finally obtained the oath of restraint." As they make their way back, Alon assures Evan there won't be anything dangerous on the way, but Evan sounds less convinced. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kalia is seen walking along a stone corridor, her hand brushing against the wall. Back in the canyon, Alon tells Evan that thanks to knowing the game route, their journey was easy. But Evan, looking worried, points out a new problem. It turns out the rock piles inside the canyon are actually golems, their detailed armor and spears hinting at a formidable foe. Evan panics, realizing this is the worst-case scenario, a new, unknown enemy, and his only thought is to get his young master out safely. Alon, however, declares, "This time I'll handle it," leaving Evan in shock. He calmly extends his hand toward the dark area where the golems lurk, while Evan, alarmed, shouts at him to find an escape route first, no matter what he's planning. A massive golem swings its spear down, the weapon striking the ground dangerously close to Alon. Alon stands his ground, surrounded by crackling magical energy, and before a mystical, glowing portal in a dark void. He speaks the ancient words to the oath of restraint, asking it to speak 2 restrictions he can enact. He reacts with surprise to the disembodied voice in the void, remembering that in the game, this part appeared as a choice window. The oath of restraint, he recalls, is an absorption-type artifact that allows the user to impose restrictions on themselves in exchange for power. Alon looks at his medallion, reflecting on the experience, and states his first restriction. He performs magic hand signs, declaring that he will always perform the hand signs of Babylonia when using magic. The voice asks what he desires through this restriction, and he responds with a request for the power to twist the laws of the world a little further. The voice grants his wish. Alon, focused and serious, then states his second restriction. He forms complex hand signs, continuing the ritual by stating Babylonia, and when the voice asks what he desires through this restriction, he demands greater power to defy the world's laws. He stares intently, holding his hand signs, then looks worried, questioning if he messed up somewhere, despite mimicking the exact skill icon. He looks upward with concern, hoping this has to work. The mysterious entity grants his wish, expressing gratitude to the human who remembers the gestures and mysteries of a forgotten god, who now inherits its will. Alon watches as the ring he holds is absorbed, noting that the restriction was successfully applied, but he wonders what inherit the will truly means. Heavy impact rocks the cavern as Alon struggles against the golem, while the voice of the oath declares it will forever be watching him, the one who inherits its will. Evan looks on in alarm, trying to warn his young master about using second-tier magic, but shouts that it isn't strong enough to stop the golem's relentless attack. Alon's mind flashes to the hand of a knight, gripping a sword ready for combat, his expression intent and focused. He holds out his hand, now crackling with magical lightning energy, but realizes the sphere of lightning, which ought to look brilliant, now looks pitiful, even though he's pouring in all his mana, confirming that this is his limit no matter how hard he trains. Which is why he thinks it's time to test. As he faces the towering, menacing stone golem, this restriction and the price he paid. Alon intensifies his magical focus as blue energy swirls around him, and he can still feel the ring on his thumb, a strange sensation. Newly empowered strategist decides it's time to test his new artifact, concentrating as raw energy flows through his hand. And then he performs a magical gesture, manifesting a glowing orb with a focused refraction. A massive burst of blue electrical energy erupts, as our black-haired count's son stands in a glowing field, hand raised, channeling blue light, unleashing a powerful electric spell against an unseen opponent. He gestures again, blue lightning arcing around him, declaring line of diffraction, making precise hand signals to control the crackling power, and directs a bolt of electricity forward. Powerful magical explosion erupts between Alon and his target, with energy crackling violently as the strike hits. Nearby, a man with an eye patch watches the magical display in shocked surprise. As electrical energy surges across the battlefield, blue energy crackling and striking with intense force. Alon and Evan stand in the cavern, magical lightning striking around them, with blue magical energy crackling near a rocky structure, and bolts of lightning striking a distant target. After the magical barrage, the two observe the aftermath, and Alon looks calm while Evan stands utterly shocked, asking flat out, "WHAT? The hell?" As they walk through the cavern, Evan continues to press, "Have you been hiding your strength?" To which our former office worker calmly replies, "Not at all." Evan still looks tired, but Alon stands tall, his face expressionless yet internally confused, wondering, it wasn't like that back in the game. He remembers the game's turn-based system, where magic could be enhanced each turn through hand signs or incantations, and explains that this time he enhanced his chain lightning magic with 4 incantations and hand signs for a total of 5 turns. In other words, he simply used a large-scale lightning spell with a powerful setting. As cosmic energy flows around him in a dark space, Alon muses that he must use hand signs and incantations for all his magic, but talking to Evan about it makes him sigh. Ugh, this is more exhausting than the battle. Evan, completely drained, sits against a rock wall while Alon calmly points up at the sky, deep in thought, reflecting that the Maze of Whispers actually had a different name. 3 weeks later, Alon helps an exhausted Evan to his feet, telling him, "Good work for the past 3 weeks." Evan reacts with Chibai-style shock and awe, marveling, Young master, you're more diligent than you look." As they walk through a forest at night, Alon explains that if he chooses the right incantation, its properties get enhanced, which is how the game mechanics were supposed to work. But unlike the game where visuals stayed the same, this time he noticed the spell change shape. Looking at his own glowing hands while channeling magic, our accidental mage contemplates that he might be especially good at controlling mana to see those transformations, resolving to test it once his mana recovers, relieved that things turned out fine. Meanwhile, a hooded figure stands alone in a dark forest, glowing eyes looking upward, leaping through the trees. This cloaked traveler walks along a stone path with glowing blue inscriptions from the era of the forgotten outer gods, approaching a massive wall covered in runic writing. The glowing runes depict a message, "For my friend who shall be left alone from coward Palion," and the hooded character reaches out to touch the inscriptions. The text describes Palion as the one who stopped the invasion of the Black Things, who stood victorious against the Alak-Yulaka. He was known as the Brilliant Emperor. Character surrounded by floating magical books reveals they obtained all this knowledge because they were born with the ancient library. Alon remarks, A guy named Pallon created it." Someone notes that they knew Palion was special because the Bloody Queen followed him, but they didn't expect the Great Moon to be his friend. They also add that a phrase Palion whispered doesn't exist anywhere in the ancient library, making them question what he truly is. Yusha looks down with a sorrowful, reflective expression, concluding, "The Red Moon was right." She clasps her hands, expressing regret. "I'm embarrassed to be blindly following orders." Later, a hooded figure perched high in a tree asks another, "Did you get the information?" The cloaked individual with glowing purple eyes replies, "No, the Dark One is dead." They explain that his head twisted all of a sudden in midair. In a dimly lit room, a woman with long red hair and red eyes quietly drinks tea, remembering Alon's chillingly emotionless expression and how his eyes were those of the abyss. She muses, however, he called her famous, even though she doesn't participate in social activities. Standing behind a man seated at a desk, she asks, "Isn't that fascinating, father?" The middle-aged man at the desk, Count here, merely continues writing with a quill. Dark, shadowy mist swirls in the air as the red-haired woman with glowing red eyes smiles, surrounded by the ominous smoke, casting a dark magical effect over the older man. He speaks with a sinister expression, her hand near her face, revealing, "No one would know that I've made my father a puppet so I can work as the real head of the household." She wonders, how did he figure it out? She then surmises that there are too many eyes on US right now, and it seems he also noticed the spies she put on him. Man in a blue uniform rushes towards her in a grand hallway, calling out, "MSKALLA." A man in a formal suit stands, his face obscured by a dark, sinister magical effect, and Kalia and the uniformed man stand side by side, looking off-panel, as someone commands them to reveal the secret. Our cunning lady looks down with a sinister smirk, framed against roses and shadows, concluding, "He caught a major weakness of mine the moment we met, huh?" She confidently crosses her arms. Elsewhere, 2 armored golems stand confused as a small insect crawls past them, because you can get right past HIM if HE doesn't see you for 3 seconds. Above, a cosmic celestial figure sits on a dark throne, holding a sword and a glowing planet-like sphere. Carriage travels toward the Altia Ducal estate at night, where Lady Loria looks down with a dark, serious expression, reflecting, as expected, he's not someone to underestimate. A memory of Alon's cold eyes haunts her. He is the distinguished one of the underworld, with eyes like her father's. In a dimly lit hallway, Loria remembers Alon as the kind of person she must never make an enemy of, saying he was her last lifeline, but he wouldn't accept a deal that would result in significant losses. She reflects on how her sly siblings took away all her assets and power, leaving her with nothing, standing alone in front of a large mansion. Lady Loria reacts in shock as servants rush to greet her, one exclaiming, "El Lady Loria / our youngest lady is back." She's horrified by the news, stammering, "Taken their own lives / what?" Seeing silhouettes of her siblings with red X marks, she finds it illogical. Those people would rather stab their own family. Yet they took their own lives. That doesn't make any sense. Our desperate heiress stares in shock at the servants' words. Servants are panicked, one announcing, "El Lord Timalian is." Timalian and his partner are shown impaled by swords, and Lady Marian stares in shock, asking, "What in the world?" Above, a mysterious silver-haired figure lands on a rooftop at night, reporting, "Successfully eliminated." Lady Marian is startled as Alon Palatio approaches her, saying, "Just / good things will happen." As he looks at her, trembling in fear, she realizes that this is what he meant about the true mastermind of the Count's household, who hid his claws and waited to seize power. Clutching her arms, she acknowledges that just like him, she's alone in a dark corridor, letting out a humorless ha. The trembling mastermind questions, "What kind of monstrous devil have I made a pact with?" but quickly adds, "But I can't go back now." She reflects on the many precedents of what happens to those who betray him, and with determination prepares to continue on the path she chose. Back in his office, a servant presents a box to our black-haired Count, who asks, "Duke Altia?" Alon and Evan examine the contents of the box, Alon impressed with a wow. They examine a wine bottle that Alon heard costs a few thousand gold per bottle, a sight he never thought he'd see. Looking at a card from Loria Altia with a concerned expression, he surmises that Loria, the youngest, prepared it, not the Duke himself, and wonders why she sent it, feeling his conscience sting because he wasn't able to help her. He asks the servant to confirm, "Sure this is for me?" To which the servant replies, "Yes, the Duke herself." Alon reacts with surprise, realizing, "Wait, that means the youngest Lori?" He completes the thought as Loria Altia writes at her desk in a grand study, "has become the Duke." Loria stretches, exhausted after working. Phew. Standing in her large office, looking at the desk she couldn't even enter before, musing that the death of her siblings happened so suddenly, but she was not suspected at all. Her alibi was attending the ball, but at the time, her secret organization had been eliminated by her siblings, and when she returned to the mansion, she was quite literally powerless. Looks down with a pained, trembling expression, admitting, "I realized it later and was quite surprised." She recognizes that Alon declined her offer without much care on the outside, but he must have helped her because he needs Altia for some part of his plan. And although she was able to merge all the subordinate organizations, it won't be enough to match the power he is hiding. Our new Duchess knows this means he wants something from her, Alon Palatio, a significant figure of the underworld who raised his power purely through his business. She deduces that if there's something she has that he doesn't, it's being able to manipulate the political stage from the shadows, meaning he needs the Altia name. Lon looks at his aide with a concerned expression, thinking, "Lora was threatened with death and now she's the Duke. What's wrong with him now? Something's not right." He walks through a hallway near a large window and Evan walks towards him, asking, "I should call you the Count now, right?" Our accidental noble looks thoughtful with a downcast expression, admitting, "I didn't plan on becoming the Count, Though." He then thinks in Chiba style, "Well, since I'm used to it now, I can maximize the advantage of being a noble." He hands a sealed letter to Evan. Evan and Alon stand in a room, with Evan asking, "By the / did you get any information on the assassins who killed Leo?" Seated at a round table, Evan continues, "I'm guessing IT/ not revenge." Alon looks thoughtful, considering that all the things that slightly differ from the original game were probably butterfly/ effects caused by ME. So, Evan with his eye patch smiles, impressed. Wow, Alon looks down at the letter he's holding, wondering, "I wonder what SHE wrote this time." Yusha's letter describes how everyone is focusing on their hobbies. Deus's puppet shows are professional. Xiaoreng loves games, Rin quietly reads, and Raiden tends his garden. Our diligent planner looks thoughtful and smiles while reading, thinking, "I've never seen their faces, but..." Evan notes that was, and looking at Alon says, "Some of them left the orphanage / earlier." Alon looks at a drawing of the 5 doomed children, including Yusha, exclaiming, "WOH." He looks at a portrait of the children, bowing, feeling the weight of his responsibility. Right, that's IT. He recalls their talents. Yusha had the talent of faith, Deus had the talent of the sword, Rin had the talent of studying, Xiaoreng had the talent of a fighter, and Raiden had the talent of an apostle. Lon raises a box above his head in celebration as Evan watches, proclaiming, "If they were to use their talents in the right fields, they should be more than fine. /MHM. What a perfect plan." He holds a quill, thinking about the 5 children, deciding that while he's at it, he should prepare a gift for each of them. Alon celebrates at his desk, shouting, "All done," while Evan sips tea on a couch. Black-haired Count thinks about the future, wondering if he can get something back from them, as birds fly in a glowing, sunset-colored sky, and he imagines sending his message. "Children, read my letters and go out into the world." A girl with long hair reads a letter in a dimly lit room, noting, "The orders have arrived." A group of young people, including a beastkin girl, receive letters, reacting in surprise. They then react excitedly, "Yay." A Chiba-style beastkin girl asks, "Do you like it?" Our accidental puppet master gathers with the children he saved, all holding letters, and one of his animal-eared protégés is absolutely thrilled, while another young woman reads intently, her expression serious. The silver-haired woman, Yutia, reminds the group that only she could read previous letters, making the animal-eared girl ask if they can really read these new ones, since only Yutia ever got to before. The group clusters together, surprised, wondering if this is a coded order or just some friendly small talk. Yutia looks at another letter, telling one of the kids to pay attention, and the young people all look stunned by the contents of their mail. Yutia gestures as she speaks to Alon, her gaze unwavering. One of the kids points out that letters are a strange choice if leaks are a problem, but another quickly reminds them that all they have to do is follow the order. Yutia looks down at her letter, reflecting on the chillingly steadfast trust the children have in Alon, and our black-haired count's son meets her gaze, confirming that he hasn't forgotten his responsibilities. Then the animal-eared girl holds up her letter, excited to finally read the order. In a quiet, dimly lit room, a lantern casts long shadows as the group stands together, collectively reading their new instructions, and Alon and the blonde girl discover their respective destinations. The animal-eared girl looks distressed, repeating the name of her destination. Colony. Another woman and man look over their papers, confirming their destination is the city. The woman with long, pale hair looks down with an enigmatic expression, revealing her destination, the Holy Kingdom of Rosario. Alon and the animal-eared girl continue to discuss their letters, and others excitedly confirm that their patronage will continue, along with the locations of their gifts. A woman seen from behind addresses the group, including Alon, with a crucial warning. Do not mention / the name of the blue moon. She clutches the letter to her chest, her expression firm. Soon after, Alon and the others walk along a path toward a grand building. Later, a library table is covered with stacks of books, and Alon sits, looking concerned as he reads, sighing that there's nothing about the mysterious changes in magic and phrases. He talks to Evan, wondering if these changes are a butterfly effect of his own actions, and then our reluctant patron touches his chin thoughtfully. He looks up, visualizing Loria, who should have died in the original story, but instead became Duke Altia, expanding her power at a terrifying speed in the underworld. Evan stands by a bookshelf, listening to Alon. A hooded figure appears in a magical void filled with glowing books, stating that ignorance is clearly bliss in this situation, as almost nothing escapes the Information Guild's network. Alon looks anxious and distressed, realizing that if he tries to dig into what he shouldn't, the result might be something unpredictable. Flashback shows a person being struck by a magical blast, as Alon remembers his past belief that secret organizations wouldn't harm him as long as he didn't meddle with their stuff. Evan continues arranging books on a cart, while Alon listens intently. Alon looks surprised as a sword crest glows in the background, a new plan forming. Later, Alon and Evan talk in a town square while eating skewers, marveling at someone's talent. They discuss sword ranks, mentioning someone reaching a new level or higher, and Alon can't believe it hasn't been that long since this person was first appointed. Chibai character practices with a sword, and a companion with an eye patch proudly declares how talented he is. The scene shifts to a grand mansion exterior. Alon uses a magical ability at his desk while Evan watches, and just as he was getting used to the Count's work, something unexpected happens. Close-up shows a hand writing with a quill on paper. Alon looks startled, wisps of magical energy emanating from his hand. He stands at his desk, quill in hand, looking at Evan. A visual showcase highlights the Swordmaster of Psychedelia, a superhuman who has gone beyond the aura blade. Close-up of a sword hilt shows energy glowing, revealing this master has unlocked a unique ability called derivation. Alon looks anxious as he gestures while speaking to Evan. Warrior performs a sword strike, a testament to the fact that the nation gave him the title of a master knight anyway. Close-up of a sword mid-swing reveals he has already won a duel against the fourth sword. Alon looks contemplative, hand to his chin. Evan, his eye patch visible, also looks off-frame with a thoughtful expression. Reinhardt, the first sword, a red-haired warrior, prepares to strike a large, dark, tree-like monster, noted to be the youngest master knight ever at 32. His sword impacts the ground, creating a blinding flash of energy. Reinhardt poses with his sword over his shoulder, confidently stating, "I've wielded my sword since I was 5. Have some faith in the youngest SWORDMASTER to ever exist." Alon stands back-to-back with Reinhardt, reflecting that even with such talent, it took over 20 years to reach this level. Chibai Alon tells a Chibai Evan that this progress is happening sooner than he expected. Alon sits at his desk, looking weary as he glances at a book and an envelope. Evan waves his hands dismissively, trying to comfort Alon. Alon stands beside Evan, lamenting that he only gets letters from Yutia. The narrator explains that even after Yutia went to the Holy Kingdom, her regular letters contained news of the deadly sins she grew up with, showing they keep in touch. Our game-savvy schemer looks down with a serious expression. Alon holds his hands to his face in shock, exclaiming that he's already more than thankful they haven't destroyed the kingdom after awakening into the 5 deadly sins. Alon and Evan stand before a large window, our protagonists simply happy as long as they're doing well. The sun sets over a scenic clock tower. The capital of Caliburn, the central area of Kurtham, is bathed in purple light, where knights train with swords in front of a grand mansion, the residence of a high-ranking noble and home to the illustrious solar eclipse knights. The lower bodies and boots of armored knights march, their training continuing. Deus Macalian stands alone inside a large windowed hall, looking out. Deus Macalian, the captain of the solar eclipse knights and the youngest master knight, looks out with a thoughtful expression. He looks down at two people standing in the courtyard below. A girl with long purple hair enthusiastically greets her brother. The purple-haired man looks at the girl with a gentle, slightly mysterious expression. Close-up of the man's face reveals his internal monologue. It's been a whole year, but thinking back still makes him feel embarrassed. Flashback shows a young girl being struck by dark, shadowy tendrils, as he remembers losing everything to those black things. The girl reaches out, a glowing object appearing before her in the darkness. All he had left was uncontrollable rage. Dark energy surges around the girl, who floats helplessly, consumed by hatred. The young man sits alone in a dark, prison-like cell, clutching a glowing object, remembering that the fact the Great Moon saved his life wasn't a good enough reason to swear allegiance to him. But because the Great Moon promised he could take revenge with his own hands, he followed orders under the Blue Moon. For years, he worked as part of the Blue Moon, enduring many dangerous missions and training, uncaring for his own well-being, as he carried out missions that would become the foundation to fight against the Black Things. Then soon enough, he received a personal order for the first time, from Alon, who left a gift in a small hotel located in southern Caliburn, a gift that didn't really excite him at first. The man in a cloak walks through a lit wooden doorway at night. Side profile close-up shows the young man with blonde highlights, looking surprised. The man in the dark cloak walks towards a girl, holding a broom in a building. Close-up of an outstretched human hand reaches toward the girl. The broom clatters to the floor, highlighted by a glowing effect. The man and girl are embracing each other tightly, the family he thought he had lost forever now in his arms. The girl with purple eyes looks up with a tearful expression. The man weeps, holding his sister tightly, tears streaming down his face. Close-up shows their hands held against his face, a moment of profound reunion. Alon Palatio finally gets his long-awaited reunion with Yutia, the sister he helped Deus find, embracing her tightly as they both shed tears of relief. And later, they sit down for tea, where Yutia looks deep in thought, reflecting on everything that led her here. She recalls a dark time when she was caged, facing certain death, until a mysterious figure cast a glowing spell, just as she reached out a hopeful hand, before being snatched by shadowy energy from above. But then a mercenary named Evan slashed through the darkness to save her. After that, she received precious medicine and support from her sponsor, Alon Palatio, who promised in a note, "I will keep sending the medicine and support. You're safe under the name of Palatio. Don't worry about your sibling either." This incredible protection under his family name makes her blush and look at him in surprise, while our black-haired count's son looks surprised himself, as he realizes Yutia somehow knows his secret. "I've never told anyone about my family, and Yutia only noticed that the black lamb got me." As Alon and Yutia stare at each other, all her questions about him suddenly click into place like puzzle pieces, and Deus realizes our meticulous planner already knew everything, having hinted at survival to the child who would be left alone, even when his sword, Deus himself, dared to act on its own. Alon had decided to be generous and merciful. Deus recalls chewing on nothing but hatred and thoughts of revenge against the black sheep. But Alon provided a survival measure, and Yutia, with an intense look, cryptically warns that he will also soon realize the truth. Deus, now understanding, resolves to repay Alon by creating his own personal knight order filled with the best swordsmen. Soon, the young knight tells his captain it's time, leading a large formation of soldiers, as the solar eclipse expedition sets off to battle against the barbarians. Deus proclaims he does not care what hardship may come, as he awaits the day he can offer Alon his gratitude, along with a recompense that will satisfy him. And so, the solar eclipse knights march through the snowy mountains. Meanwhile, our reluctant patron relaxes outdoors, surrounded by books, feeling peaceful now that all his kids are grown, until a sudden gust of wind sends his precious research papers scattering like a cloud of white moths. And he shouts in alarm, "No, they're all flying away." He looks stressed as he tries to write, but eventually settles back into focused work, reviewing notes in his book, and declares his progress good. Our magic-wielding scholar meticulously writes about how refraction strengthens the imperfection within a completed spell, causing its range to spread. He also notes that repulsion crushes the form, affecting the transition of the fired projectile, and that blue light reinforces parallel magic such as electrical magic. He continues, explaining that line of diffraction grants penetration, meaning a critical effect, diligently studying his notebook, as he researches the forgotten hand signs and phrases of Babylonia, for which there's no information in this world. Now, after 2 months of experimenting, our accidental mage is ready to see the result outdoors, as his hands perform precise magical gestures, sparking blue energy, channeling energy and chanting to eliminate the focal point of this monosphere and cause an imbalance to spark lightning. He declares, "This weak and worthless magic is compression," by chanting the phrases to finally cast his fleeting bloom spell. Alon steps back into the distance, observing the massive electrical discharge he just created, a magical tree made of crackling electricity, leaving him deep in thoughtful reflection. Looks thoughtful, then suddenly he's shocked, murmuring, "Impossible." Meanwhile, unknown onlookers watch from an archway, utterly bewildered by the spectacle, exclaiming in shock, realizing he's used an origin magic, and our meticulous planner bursts out, "Why is Kalia here?" One of the shocked onlookers, an older man in glasses, exclaims that using origin magic means he's at the caliber of a 7th circle mage. Our patron of villains just stares blankly, utterly confused by the term origin, and why anyone would think he could use it. Elsewhere, a man with a cape and swords demands his belongings are his, begging someone not to leave him for another country. Accidental mastermind Alon Palatio has some important visitors from Zenonia, and the red-haired woman among them reflects that she had two clear reasons for coming here. First, to confirm the intentions of Count Palatio, who seemed to hold the wild card to inflict major damage to Zenonia, and second, to detect the power level of the organization protecting him. But instead, what she learned left her terrified. The elderly man with her explains that the man before them, Alon, is Viancle, a mage banished from the magic tower for inhumane experiments, who can annihilate an entire division of soldiers with ease. Yet he keeps his arrogant attitude even to his longtime sponsor. The red-haired woman looks startled as our poker-faced noble asks her flat out, "What brings you to the county?" Later, the three sit in Alon's parlor and she replies simply, "Visit." She looks uneasy, as Alon sits seriously observing his guests. Then the elderly man leans forward to clarify. What he means to say is, stay quiet about what you just saw. The woman reacts in shock, realizing that Viancle is actually being polite. Alon sighs with relief that they understood his subtle warning, then asks his guest if she truly has no special reason for being here. Our poker-faced noble then casually suggests, "Thank you for taking your time to meet me. If you need anyone to talk to, I advise you to visit Duchess Altia." The red-haired woman swallows nervously and agrees to visit if he says so. Just as the Zenonia visitors leave, another carriage arrives at the manor, bringing a ruined family from the west to their doorstep. And Alon thinks to himself, this is going to be troublesome. He has a momentary panic, imagining powerful enemies surrounding him, worrying that if a false rumor of him using origin magic spreads, the strongest fighters will pick fights, because this world is a dark fantasy after all. Walking with Evan, our perpetually stressed patron hopes the Zenonia visitors understood his message, thinking, just don't come to me. In their carriage, the elderly man reflects on Alon's power, realizing Alon wasn't just using ordinary magic. He explains that origin magic draws its own laws upon the canvas of absolute, unchanging principles, and is permitted only to the pinnacle of mages. But Alon was tearing the canvas itself, twisting the absolute, unchanging principles. He fixated the lightning, twisted it, and collapsed the law, and even after all that, the magic still materialized, a truly impossible miracle. The man clutches his head, in agony from the knowledge, realizing that Alon's magic was clearly of the great forgotten god, and he has to stop thinking about it because any more will be dangerous. He shouts about his deep research into ancient knowledge, stressing that he's earned praise for his study of forgotten magic. The red-haired woman smirks, sarcastically asking if he means it's meaningless for someone as insignificant as her to figure out Alon's intentions. She sees Alon's advice. I advise you to visit Duchess Altia, as a chess move, and she realizes with distress, I've already become his pawn. Soon after, Evan enters the room, and Alon asks if he got any news, only to learn that Zenonia County and Altia Duchy have allied. Our accidental mastermind instantly panics, yelling in his mind that he got the sins to go on a different path. But now, he has to deal with an alliance between two masterminds, wondering if the Asteria Kingdom is about to fall into ruin. He wonders if the red-haired woman seriously took his words to visit Duchess Altia, then dismisses it, telling himself it's probably just a temporary alliance. He shows Evan a document, telling him to at least make some preparations. Then our careful chess player drafts a letter to Kalia, apologizing for coming off as blunt and cold, blaming his poor word choice, and deciding to send it through the mercenary guild while keeping an eye out for the children, too. He clutches his head in frustration, hoping Kalia isn't dead on the streets somewhere. Meanwhile, an item description reveals the essence of the Golden Mane tribe, a legendary artifact that grants a critical rate bonus, and explains that if the Sin of Pride had obtained this, she would not have fallen into corruption but instead become a great wolfkin. Alon reads this, noting the location of the hidden treasures he'd planned as emergency funds, knowing that Kalia is talented enough to claim it. Far away in the Nation of Fighters, also known as the Desert Colony, a place where strength can earn you the entire world, a young wolf girl walks into a cave at twilight, letting out a relieved sigh because the trial is finally over. She holds up a golden gauntlet in triumph, admiring her new prize. With glowing eyes, she asks her tribe about the essence of the Golden Mane tribe, and an elder explains that their Wolfkin tribe are descendants of the kings of all beastkins, the Golden Mane tribe. The essence is a legendary item, inherited for hundreds of years, that grants them strength and authority. The girl declares that the fact she obtained the essence and passed all of the inner world's trials remains true. Standing firm, she acknowledges the great moon as her benefactor, vowing that she will repay him for this favor. Surrounded by a massive aura of golden energy, the wolf girl looks determined, striking an aggressive combat stance. A bright golden flash emanates from her gauntlet, her intense golden eye glowing as she declares her goals: to become the strongest gladiator, revive the Golden Mane tribe by gathering their scattered members, and finally to kill the Black Dragon with her new power. She looks up at the full blue moon in the night sky, stating clearly that everything she does is for him. With a predatory grin, she proclaims, "Let's begin." The great kings of the Beastkins, the Golden Mane tribe, are finally revived beneath the blue moon after 500 years. Our overworked schemer, Alon Palatio, is busy reviewing documents when Evan starts rambling about something he almost forgot to mention at the training grounds. And Alon, probably used to Evan's roundabout ways, finally asks him to get to the point. Evan quickly gets serious, sharing information about the children, which prompts our black-haired count's son to recall a name. Golden Flash, a name that makes him flash back to a golden beastkin girl fighting guards, feeling like he's heard it somewhere important. Evan, with his signature eye patch, simply nods, confirming his memory. Alon sits thoughtfully, watching Evan examine his training sword. Then Alon suddenly asks why Evan isn't busy, shocking his knight with the unexpected question. Evan, surprised by the abrupt change in topic, exclaims that he's never even heard of the magic tower Alon is referring to. Our future-knowing noble looks on with a curious expression, already knowing more than he lets on. The truth is, Alon is just tired, already dreading the upcoming journey to the Blue Magic Tower. He tells Evan they'll be heading there, explaining that it's near Labyrinth City. Alon sits on the sofa, clutching a paper, while Evan stands in the foreground, probably still processing the sudden travel plans. Our reluctant patron collapses onto the sofa, utterly exhausted at the thought of spending a month in a carriage, but knows he has no choice because he needs an item to support his small and precious future. He rests his head in his hand, looking pensive as he considers his options. Labyrinth City, known in the game Psychedelia as the ultimate level grinding map, promises higher quality items the deeper players venture. Yet no one has ever reached its end, a challenge that drove players insane and led to relics and artifacts being consistently found on its higher floors. This created a boom in the official magic appraiser job, a guaranteed path to wealth, with even our blue-haired genius, Phineas Crayson, planning to take the exam soon. Lon reclines, looking troubled, thinking about how his foresight only complicates things. A close-up reveals his concerned expression, hinting at the burden he carries. Under the night sky, Labyrinth City Larthania stands, its illuminated tower a beacon. It's a bustling hub of explorers and mercenaries, a city ruled by no one. Passing countless shops in its southern corner, one can find a secret appraisal shop, one called Merd. This shop quietly gained fame for its unique services, catering mostly to nobles and high-ranking explorers. Lon approaches the shop, a knowing smile playing on his lips, recognizing its importance from his past life. He presents a glowing orange lantern-like relic to the masked shopkeeper, thanking them for their consistent service. The relic glows brightly in the air, radiating mana. Its light fills the dimly lit shop. Lon then shares a crucial detail with the hooded, blonde-haired figure at the counter. The Merd sign is seen again, confirming the location. Inside a dim room, the hooded figure takes a moment of respite. The young woman takes off her ornate mask, letting out a soft sigh, revealing her true identity. She holds the intricate mask in her hand. Suddenly, she notices something while holding a small object. A brass telescope or instrument is held up in the shop. The young appraiser then walks toward a doorway, a blue magical artifact glowing softly in a dark room under the moonlight, revealing it to be a gift from the Great Moon. The artifact is, in fact, a gift from the Great Moon. A dark shadow of a figure is cast onto the floor by the moonlight. The young appraiser smiles, holding the instrument in the dim light. She thinks about a powerful figure named Palin and his fight against black things, wondering what becoming an appraiser has to do with this grand goal, as she walks through town, contemplating the seemingly unrelated order. But the moment she enters a room and sees the glowing artifact given to her, she finally understands. The glowing magical pedestal confirms her realization. The artifact, named Eye of the Stalker, rapidly identifies items below a certain mana threshold to assist with appraisal. However, as she interacts with the chained artifact, she realizes it's different from anything she knows, its substance not even existing in the library. Then, with a burst of magical energy, the chains around it shatter. The artifact glows brightly as the chains fall away, fully unleashed. The young woman channels her energy into the artifact. She realizes that to fight against the black things, she must awaken this item, understanding it to be an ability and a means of offering sacrifices. As energy flows from the artifact, gaining power, she comprehends its true nature as a means of sacrifice. She holds the glowing artifact with both hands, ready for her mission. Close-up of the artifact reveals her daunting task: 252 more sacrifices until it fully awakens. She smiles knowingly at the viewer, confident in her unique ability to accurately appraise relics and select the high-tier sacrifices needed. She holds a small cup while looking at the eye-shaped golden relic, knowing it only reacts to specific high-tier relics, and that sacrificing the wrong item would cause the entire stack to disappear. With a sly smile, she realizes this delicate task of accurately appraising and imprinting relics is something only she can do. She looks down at the golden relic, her expression determined, confirming that everything is for the sake of killing the Black Wolf. Meanwhile, a carriage pulls up to the magnificent blue magic tower. Phineas Crayson, a blue-haired mage laden with papers and books, sharply tells them to state their business and leave. Lon and Evan stand before her in a grand hallway, and Phineas, clearly busy, snaps at them to get it over with, leaving our black-haired count's son speechless. Lon thinks back to the game, remembering Phineas as a once-in-a-lifetime genius who became the tower master at just 20 years old. He knows the magic tower is incredibly strong. A reluctant patron looks down, a concerned, sweating expression on his face, clearly expecting things to go differently. Yutia frantically organizes documents at her desk, muttering about relaying another document, when Alon finally states his purpose. Eliminate the time gate. He's referring to a dangerous crack that connects to a mysterious subspace, appearing where magic is frequently used and causing significant damage. Yutia looks on with a glowing magical ocular display over her eye, her patience clearly wearing thin. Alon and Evan stand surprised as a hand gestures toward them in a magical space, and Alon thinks, W8, this isn't how it's supposed to go. A close-up on Fenia's eye shows her frustration, an angry symbol bubbling above her head. Yutia Crayson shouts angrily, blue energy shimmering around her, as she yells, "Yeah, right." She slams her hand down on a table piled with documents, demanding to know if he has any idea how many people visit in a day, practically daring him to cause a ruckus. Our black-haired Count's son, in a Chiba-like state of stress, feels wronged, wondering why she won't trust him. Yutia berates him, saying she understands he needs something huge to sway public opinion after rumors spread that he only became Count by luck after his siblings died. A magical blue energy burst creates a disturbance in the room, emphasizing her anger as she warns him not to bring his drama here. Yutia stands elevated, radiating intense blue energy, glaring down at Alon and Evan. Alon and Evan stumble back from the magical pressure, and Alon internally notes that Yutia, despite looking like a workaholic, is surprisingly well-informed about outside news, including the true and embarrassing reason he became Count. Yutia Crayson radiates intense blue magical energy, looking down with a stern expression, as Evan whispers about how scary she is. Alon, looking nervous, confides to Evan that she put him in his place when he was getting annoyed, and Evan agrees, saying her mana alone could fold them in half if they messed with her. But Alon, desperate, steps forward through the magical disturbance and offers to surrender all his property to the magic tower if he fails to eliminate the time gate, an offer Yutia dismisses as still blabbering nonsense. Our reluctant patron looks forward with calm determination, ready to make his oath. He proposes that it's not a terrible offer for just a little bit of her time, causing Yutia to pause and consider. As Alon interacts with a large, ornate magical door, Yutia accepts his terms, stating that all his wealth will be hers the moment he fails, to which Alon confidently replies, "That won't happen." The large magical door slowly creaks open, revealing the path forward. Yutia watches Alon's back, pondering if he's a mastermind or just an incompetent man who got lucky. After listening to him, she concludes he's closer to the latter. She observes Alon, noting his small mana hole and slightly above-average energy-sensing ability, barely on the edge of the second circle, despite the inhumane aura around him. From a low angle, Yutia thinks dismissively about how pathetic he seems, wondering what he plans to do with such meager talent. But then a relic chest emerges from a swirling magical pool, and Alon reveals his secret. There's no need to close the gate, because in 3 months it will naturally disappear after spitting out a relic. Alon and Yutia stand before a glowing, magical rift on the floor. Alon calmly fixes his tie as Yutia gestures behind him, urgently pointing out something in the room. Yutia looks on with an intense, concerned expression, realizing something is terribly wrong. Both Alon and Yutia appear distressed, with Yutia attempting to shout, "Leave Alria," before the entire environment shakes with an intense magical impact. Alon and Yutia stand under a massive stone pillar as the ground cracks violently. Yutia, paralyzed with fear, realizes she can't move and that everything around her has stopped. A bright magical circle activates, casting a red, ominous aura over Alon, and Yutia murmurs, "That's..." as a young girl with long hair stands in a crumbling, dark environment, possibly a vision or the true cause of the chaos. As our black-haired Count's son stands by, Yutia suddenly finds herself paralyzed in the chamber, unable to move, crying out that she can't, as her magical eye activates and reveals a giant, glowing red eye looming over them, while a powerful, encroaching force overwhelms her, holding her in place and declaring absolute silence. Reluctant patron Alon stands before Yutia with an intense expression as she states she understands his demand, her magical eye still glowing, and then the gate in the blue-lit chamber snaps shut with an unseen voice declaring, "Gate is now closed," leaving Alon holding a small circular object while Yutia, shocked, immediately covers her mouth and swears she won't tell anyone, frantically insisting, "Yes, of course I'll stay silent about this," pleading for him to believe her, which only leaves our strategic survivor confused, wondering what just happened, and thinking his bluff failed before he decides to cut his losses and tells Evan, his knight, that it's time to go home. But before our man with old eyes can leave, Yutia, the anxious mage, presents him with a box of homemade, high-quality mana potions, which he inspects before calmly stating, "2 bottles of these." Yutia clutches her head, thinking Alon is demanding an oath of mana from her, even proposing they make one, and despite Alon's worried thought that she's completely misunderstanding, he soon finds himself trapped with her, restrained by glowing magic chains within a magical blue seal, realizing there's no clearing this up. But on the bright side, he just earned a desired relic and 5 potions. Later, as a carriage carries our former corporate slave away from the tower, he examines a new bracelet on his wrist. Thankful he earned the Mark of the Corrupted, an item that perfectly absorbs and stores mana from the air with its embedded gems. And though it can't hold much, it's still more than his own body, which he notes has less mana than a support item, making the bracelet essential for magical investigation and self-preservation, not combat. Alon observes a girl bowing politely and notes her sudden change in demeanor, even wondering if she's mocking him when she gives a thumbs up to his second circle mage claim. He reflects on a magical barrier similar to Kalia's, but decides it doesn't matter, as his carriage takes him away, and eventually reaches the Grand Altia ducal estate, where Lady Zenonia and another woman, Altia, share a comfortable tea, revealing they both came to understand Count Palatio's orders and influence, forming an alliance with no questions asked, under the Palatio family's absolute power, which is why Zenonia receives a letter from Altia about noble complaints, all orchestrated as a power play under the symbol of an eye and chalice, making Zenonia and Altia quite friendly, and prompting Altia to hand over a letter, which Zenonia looks at with a nervous expression, reading about how some nobles complained about her visit, and the writer begging for understanding. Two noblewomen realize these complaints are definitely in order, understanding that Alon dislikes both aristocratic and royalist factions, confirming their suspicions that he wants to push out existing nobles and establish a new regime, leaving one woman distressed as she wonders why he made her the. And then the red-haired woman discusses a plan to work with the hegemon of the West, before they settle in to talk details, while Alon is seen from behind, appearing menacing as he orchestrates the change. Finally, they sit down and agree, let's talk about the plan, shall we? Back at the Blue Magic Tower, an unknown person wonders if Count Palatio truly closed the time gate, while a man stands in an office asking, Master, explain, as a stressed blue-haired woman looks up, but Alon is far away, sitting comfortably by a fire, only to choke on a sweet potato, prompting his loyal knight Evan to immediately hand him some water. The eccentric tower master, Sele Micardo, bursts back into the Blue Magic Tower, loudly announcing, OHPNIA. MY disciple, I'm back. But instead of her usual fiery greeting, Pina is slumped over her desk, looking utterly exhausted, and meekly reports that she has finished the work he entrusted to her, which immediately makes our worried tower master realize something is seriously wrong, because her usual arrogance and flippancy have pierced the sky, making a rookie cry again for the 77th time. See, Selim never intended to fix her personality, knowing she was genuine when it came to magic, confident that the moment she reached the 7th circle, she would naturally become modest on her own after realizing how pointless her achievements truly were. He gently asks if she had too much on her hands during his long business trip to the north, but our grumpy magic prodigy just pouts sadly, which leads him to the crucial question. Made an oath? Selim, seeing her distress, gently pats her head, clearly concerned for his disciple's well-being. Meanwhile, our mana-charged master, Alon Palatio, is returning from the Blue Magic Tower, feeling pretty good about his progress. Since acquiring the Mark of the Corrupted, he's gained more daily magic use, letting him start earnest research on magic phrases, which has already led him to learn a new rule for using them. As Alon walks, Evan, his steadfast knight, follows closely, expressing admiration, especially after seeing the impressive crater Alon's magic creates, making Evan observe, your magic sure is interesting, Count, because an increase in magical proficiency means an increase in precision and realization. Our thoughtful strategist quickly hones his skills. Evan then hands Alon a letter, who accepts it politely, stating he'll read it at his leisure. But when Evan asks if he's going back inside, Alon confirms that he's already used up his 3 daily magic uses. As he reads the letter, our black-haired Count's son is confused to learn about an oriental ritual, where a caster sacrifices themselves to place a curse on another, or even themselves, causing a loss but granting a compensatory reward. He mulls over the possibility that it might be about receiving faith. But after a moment, Alon decides the whole thing just doesn't make sense at all, and sometimes he figures, you just have to forget about it and live on. Meanwhile, in the Holy Kingdom, the Rosario capital, Rional, lights up under a full moon, and specifically in the pure white city of Shirenia, where people worship the goddess of moon and peace. A nun greets Sir Lok at the East Prayer House. The young knight returns the greeting respectfully. The nun, who looks suspiciously like our future Cardinal Yutia, asks if he's been well, and Sir Lok replies that it's all thanks to her guidance. She in turn tells him she'll always be grateful. Sir Lok reveals his past despair, having spent 20 years unable to feel divine power, and was close to giving up entirely, until the nun told him that if he desired something so much, he should try having faith in the moon. He questioned her, but she simply told him he'd figure it out once he did it. So desperate he was willing to try anything. He prayed to the moon for a few days, exactly as she said, and miraculously learned how to wield divine power, bringing him such happiness that he fell for a moment's temptation. This led him to put his faith in the moon instead of goddess Shirenia, making him fear he had stepped into the path of heresy. But all power borrowed from the gods was the same. Even the artifacts bestowed under the name of the goddess shone brightly in his hands, proving his divine power was real. Sir Lok asks the nun why she told him to believe in the moon, and she explains that faith comes from an invisible belief, taking a long time to manifest. It's always easier to obtain what you need from what actually exists, she explains, because the moon will always be with you. The nun Yusha stands before a tall, arched window, reaching toward the light with a subtle, knowing smirk. Herloke's eyes widen in understanding. He finally gets it, because the goddess is also the moon herself. Bowing deeply, Herloke thanks the nun from the bottom of his heart, and the enigmatic cardinal, with a mischievous glint in her eye, asks, "Shall we pray together?" Herloke readily agrees, eager to pray again and again. Yusha's intense, slightly mischievous gaze hints at the depths of her plans. Soon, Yusha and Herloke enter a dark church filled with kneeling worshippers, and Yusha walks confidently down the aisle, her footsteps echoing, taking her place alone before the altar. She adjusts something, preparing the ritual as she announces, "Now then," and with an elegant gesture, Yusha begins to lead the prayer, proclaiming, "Let us pray," to The, as the spire of the church reaches up toward a massive, glowing full moon. Meanwhile, our subtle schemer is back outside, holding several letters, as mail is often handled through the mercenary guild and placed in the home mailbox. Our overworked office worker turned noble, Alon, finds himself slumped over his desk, feeling a familiar pang of sadness because out of all his children, only Yusha still sends him letters, even though the others are doing well. It makes me sad that no one else is sending me letters except Yutia, even Though they're all doing well. To them, he's probably just some nice guy they've never really seen. Still, he had already achieved his goal of guiding them all onto the right path, away from destroying the world, so he tries to find some inner peace. Our weary mentor takes a moment for inner reflection, but even then, his face looks tired and a little blank. Inside, he laments, "I raised 5 kids, but only the eldest acknowledges my hard work." Then, he's startled when a man with an eye patch enters, making him jump. The eye-patched messenger reports he wanted to deliver news right away, and he drops the bombshell. One of Alon's children is now a pirate. Just as Alon, looking deadpan, asks for more elaboration, Raiden himself, wearing a straw hat and a broad smile, announces, "Mister, have you been well? / have become a pirate." Our doting patron asks for updates on the others, specifically Xiaoreng and Deus. The eye-patched messenger explains that Xiaoreng has already achieved a 32-win streak, putting her close to the 100 wins required to become the Baba Yaga. Alon's eyes widen, realizing a 32-win streak is already close to surpassing the Lion King, a character who held a 41-win streak and was known as an overpowered player from his game. He remembers the Lion King was an overpowered character who briefly joined the player's party. Alon can't believe she's about to surpass the top of the entire colony's military strength. Next, Alon hears that Deus's order has successfully executed Kurga of the Snowfield, one of the 8 barbarian chiefs. The eye-patched messenger explains these are the leaders of those who metamorphose into monsters through rituals. Alon confirms he knows them very well, having battled against the barbarians and eliminated their god, Ultalris, back in the game. He's just relieved he won't have to worry about Deus's revenge anymore, since Ultalris only appears when the 5 deadly sins gather. The messenger continues, casually mentioning that a new black engraving technique exists to enhance artifacts, which Alon finds interesting. Alon, still trying to process this, replies, "About that." The eye-patched man stares intently, then drops the real bombshell. He has become the captain of the first archipelago, which is the biggest one. This sends our accidental father figure sprawling in disbelief, like a puppet whose strings were suddenly cut, left to lament having a pirate son. The eye-patched messenger explains that Raiden is excellent at finding enemies, and because he's a rare sea godkin, he's free to move in the water, which is perfect for the relic-rich oceans of Raxus. So the messenger recommended him to become a treasure hunter, a role with a promising future, which Alon notes was his own specialty in the game. As the messenger shrugs, our beleaguered boss wonders how Raiden managed to eliminate the former captain of the first archipelago, because all pirate captains are known as superhumans. The messenger confirms all captains are superhumans, who would never lose naval battles to anyone. Alon deduces that perhaps Raiden salvaged real gems from the relics of the old era. Our black-haired count's son recalls spending countless hours on the treasure hunter, minigame himself to get a good relic, which meant Raiden geared himself to obtain the captain's position. Alon holds his head in his hands, looking pale and distressed as the messenger awkwardly asks if he's all right. The sight of his tea set does little to comfort him. The scene shifts to the gigantic maritime city of Raxus, the heart of Korkia, beyond whose coast lie the 7 paradises of pirates. The first archipelago is the biggest of them all. This place was once ruled by the great pirate Alcride the Red Slayer, who received the Heavenly King's protection through wealth. And now someone has defeated him. Raiden, with silver hair, now sits confidently as the new captain of the first archipelago. He glances around, looking pensive, a slight smirk on his face. Someone off-panel comments they just don't know what's happening. Raiden, looking out over the city, reflects, "What is the Great Moon?" He admits he was never interested, having simply followed Yusha's orders as the Blue Moon without much personal thought. Now faced with a direct order from the Great Moon, he's utterly confused and finds himself asking what the point of becoming a treasure hunter is. This new order even stirs revulsion in Raiden, who is driven by an intense desire for revenge against the black things that massacred his peaceful sea god tribe, who had been living peacefully on an island no one even knew about. After escaping to the continent, his exhausted parents were killed by hunters, and he was sold into slavery. A hunter attacks a young Raiden, leaving his face traumatized. Now, looking out at the sea, Raiden decides that becoming a treasure hunter and the gift he received have nothing to do with his promised revenge, but he'll make it look like he's following the order at least. Just as fireworks go off in the background, a commotion breaks out, drawing his attention to wanted posters. As pirates celebrate around him, pouring wine and socializing, Raiden overhears them boasting that only chosen great pirates can receive the Heavenly King's protection through wealth. Then, with a flash of intense rage in his eyes, he realizes he's found the bastards who killed his parents, now powerful. He recalls how only a sacred ritual using parts of a sea godkin's body grants the power of the sea god, Clyde. This power is wielded by every captain of the 7 archipelagos. This revelation ignites a furious resolve in Raiden, who with glowing eyes curses those damned hunters. They had split his parents' bodies into 7, and now he sinks into the dark, churning water like a stone drawn to the abyss, consumed by his desire for revenge. Our thoughtful noble Alon stands on a cliffside watching fireworks light up the night sky, as waves crash against a distant ship, and a cloaked figure walks away in the distance. But his mind is racing. He wonders how the great moon knew his deepest desires, almost as if it had arranged this entire opportunity for Raiden's revenge. However, Alon also recognizes that Raiden cannot execute his revenge right away, because his targets are superhumans wielding the power of the sea god. He ponders that if the great moon truly intended all this, then there must be a reason for the glowing magical pendant he received, too. Holding the pendant to the massive moon, our black-haired count concludes that this gift must also be meant to orchestrate the very framework of that revenge. Closing his eyes in reflection, Alon feels the weight of the great moon's grand design. Meanwhile, at a tropical coastline, our vengeful pirate king, Raiden, takes a dramatic leap from a cliff into the ocean, diving deep into the blue water with his own glowing pendant, determined to claim the great moon's gift. He uncovers a magical chest containing what he calls the spectacles of Amrita and other relics that will make up for any lack of power. Standing on the beach, Raiden realizes it was foolish to simply be grateful, as the great moon had fulfilled its promise with perfect timing. Looking out at a ship on the horizon, our pirate king, Raiden, feels power surge through him, recognizing that the great moon not only presented his revenge targets, but also bestowed the strength to achieve it, making him fully understand its orders. With a hand to his chest, he understands the great moon's true intention. Carrying his treasures, Raiden walks away, declaring, "Everything is for the great moon," a conviction that slowly etches itself into his heart, like a light of trust, even if a moment of doubt, asking, "Was it?" crosses his face before he reaffirms his loyalty to the moon. Raiden stands alone on the shoreline at night, holding his chest. As autumn arrives, bringing Asteria's biennial grand social gathering, our black-haired count, Alon, unenthusiastically travels in a carriage with Evan, lamenting the mandatory participation he hates so much. Multiple horse-drawn carriages travel together down a road. Alon sits across from Evan in the carriage, both engaged in conversation. Alon quickly realizes that the nobles at this gathering are far more troublesome than bandits, enduring their mocking laughter. At a tavern table, Alon sits with a mug of ale. Nobles stand over him, joking about his single escort and his family's finances, all while he suppresses the urge to retort, wishing they'd just gossip behind his back. Alon's older brother, Leo Palatio, knows exactly why nobles talk this way, revealing that the Palatio family's infamous authority once came from dominating the vast underworld of the East. But our relaxed Alon couldn't care less about reclaiming that past, because he's making enough of a living from other ventures, finding the underworld far too dangerous for his tastes. And so, with the Palatio family no longer reigning, the Eastern underworld is now overrun by small-time opportunists, leaving our count to be seen as a mere lucky manchild. Alon, now publicly demoted from mastermind to lucky manchild, stares intensely at his tormentors as they openly insult him, and then it hits him. He realizes they are merely venting the humiliations they once suffered at the hands of the Palatio family. Unbothered, our unbothered patron calmly equates the spiteful nobles to internet haters he'd rather save as PDFs. "Feels like I'm just facing some internet haters at this point. I'd like to capture and save them as PDFs." Evan, his loyal knight, advises him to simply ignore their insults while offering a bowl of grilled corn. Alon exclaims how good the corn looks, and while nobles hurl insults about his supposed incompetence, Alon and Evan simply enjoy their corn, with Alon suggesting it would be even better with butter. The night progresses over a large house. Far to the north, a desolate land of bitter cold and endless snow, only cursed grayish light exists, a stark landscape seemingly devoid of life. Here our wounded warrior, Klekin, curses, "Those Caliburn bastards know nothing of honor. For barbarians who worship battle, a death in combat is an honorable end." However, Klekin and his people were tragically tricked by a Caliburn knight who feigned a desire for an honorable duel, leaving our warrior clutching his chest, falling in agony to the snow. As Klekin lies dying, reflecting on his shameful fate, he realizes he can't even close his eyes in death, burdened by the dishonor. Just as death's chill sets in, a shadowy voice calls to Klekin, asking him to call its great name. Shadows of warriors loom around him. As our warrior gasps out, Ultoris, his hand twitches in the snow. His knuckles white and strained, he grips the snowy ground, finishing the great. The mysterious entity with glowing eyes smiles and promises, "Yes, then I shall grant your desire." Our black-haired count and his entourage continue their uncomfortable carriage journey, enduring constant mockery from other noble families, who jeer at him for eating so little. But our unflappable noble calmly ignores them, remembering his gamer mantra. Not falling for baits is a fundamental quality of gamers. He's much more at home recalling simpler times, like catching a huge fish in a stream, and later that night, he calls for them to rest, eating grilled fish by a campfire, completely oblivious to the two mocking nobles watching on in frustrated disbelief. The nobles whisper to each other, annoyed that Alon dares to sit among them, while one even burns himself trying to debone fish. They decide to put their plan to move into the underworld into action right away, thrilled that the days of dealing with the Palatio family are finally over, and they gleefully imagine claiming the underworld's astronomical wealth and power, planning to give Alon a little gift as thanks. Laughing, they declare he'll thank them for teaching him how the world works, until an unseen sound makes them pause. Alon suddenly reacts in surprise, as glowing-eyed monsters emerge from the forest. Soldiers and a mage immediately prepare for combat, demanding that mages secure their vision first, and a bright light spell illuminates the night sky. Several crystal-infused monsters are revealed, prompting Alon to ask, "Goblins? /HAAIT/just goblins?" Though a guard quickly warns that their numbers are a problem. Indeed, crystal-infused monsters swarm out of the dark woods, and one stands over a fallen soldier, confirming their numbers are overwhelming. Alon and a guard look on with shocked expressions, as they discover everyone on watch outside is dead. Alon and his companions react in fear, wondering what in the world is happening, as they've never seen goblins like these before. Large, crystal-covered goblin sneers into the foreground, showing they're bigger and possibly a new variant, and Alon's team realizes they also possess mana, meaning their physical abilities are completely different. Close-up shows a monstrous, snarling crystal goblin. The crystal goblins quickly attack, scattering the defenders, sending debris and dust flying as the horde breaks through the lines, overwhelming the soldiers with their sudden ferocity. Two crystal goblins coordinate an attack amidst the chaos, when a powerful surge of magical energy suddenly emanates from an unknown source to hold them back. The mage questions who cast the third circle spell Rock Wall and the second circle spell Shield, wondering if there's another mage in their ranks. It's our overworked noble, Alon, channeling magical energy as he unleashes enhancement. He then activates compression, crushing the goblin forces, as a magical containment field shrinks the goblin cluster into a singular point. Alon follows up with vacuum. Return to slash the origins, to disintegrate the remaining monsters, releasing a final, brilliant burst of magical energy from his gauntlet. The magical blast annihilates the targeted goblins instantly, wiping out the remnants of the horde and concluding the battle. Alon, positioned behind the goblin force, channels more magical energy, reaching out with a glowing hand toward the attacking horde and commanding his companions, "Don't just stand there. Get ready." Knights engage in a skirmish with goblins, while Alon extends his hand, using magic to crush and blast away several crystal-infused goblins, then wields a blade of concentrated energy, slashing through enemies in the dark. The battlefield is left scattered with the bodies of defeated goblins under a bright sunset, as knights stand near fallen goblins under the trees. Alon peers around a large tree, looking concerned at two figures in the background. Knights approach him from behind, wondering, "Just WHO, is that man?" A close-up of Alon's legs stands over the remains of a defeated crystal goblin. Alon looks visibly stressed and sweaty as he reflects, "I almost died there." He's stressed by his magical limitations, only able to cast 3 or 4 spells per day. He reassures Evan he's fine, but admits that even with Evan around, losing the ability to protect himself is a very scary experience. Evan checks on him again, but Alon insists he's okay, adding that he's glad he decided to move in a group with the other nobles rather than go alone. Our stressed-out strategist points out that the amethyst-like crystals covering the goblins are the biggest problem, wondering why divine descent just occurred. A mysterious voice explains that divine descent, it's a bizarre trait that appears when an outer god is about to descend, making affected monsters more ferocious and enhancing their physical abilities. Red-eyed monsters attack in a dark forest, illustrating the phenomenon as Alon and Evan stand together. Alon questioning if this is even possible, because outer gods should only appear after the 5 deadly sins descend and the laws of the world collapse. A winged celestial figure looms, confirming the outer gods are about to come down upon the land. Alon wonders why this is happening when the children haven't even awakened into the 5 deadly sins. He holds his hand to his head in distress, asking what exactly the problem is. As Alon and Evan walk away from the battlefield, Alon decides he needs to collect information as soon as he arrives, because, at this rate, I'll die in the NEAR future. Both Alon and Evan look distressed, hands on their heads. Alon, cloaked, covers his mouth while walking behind Evan, just wanting to go home and sleep. Our black-haired count arrives at the opulent ballroom, noting it's a perfect place for a grand social gathering. Everything's made of gold. He thinks about how the purpose is to show off wealth, but finds it tacky for some reason, while subtly considering taking a piece. He listens as laughter echoes through the room, from noble guests socializing around him. Alon looks annoyed, keeping his distance when someone tries to get his attention. He reacts with a deadpan expression to an unseen person, as two noblemen approach, smiling obsequiously and asking for his time. They offer him support for his territory, even presenting gifts of meat and gold, making Alon confused by their sudden change of attitude. The two noblemen cower in fear, reacting to his expression as if it were an emergency. Flashback reveals they shouldn't have messed with him, showing Alon and his associate stoically walking past defeated enemies. The two noblemen are terrified, remembering magic. They confront a mage, questioning if the magic they saw was second circle, but the mage insists it easily surpassed his own power, implying it was over third circle. Flashback image of Alon, standing heroically in front of a giant crystalline formation, shows he was hiding his strength. Close-up of Alon looking intense and menacing confirms their fear. The two noblemen panic, deciding they have no choice but to beg for mercy. They bow deeply to Alon in the ballroom, blaming a lousy dream for their prior behavior. Prostrate on the floor, they beg for mercy as Evan asks Alon if they're at it again. Alon looks at the begging noblemen with a deadpan, annoyed expression, internally wondering where they got the wrong idea, and if he should take them out, but decides it's more tiring if he makes a fuss. He looks disdainful, holding a tart, deciding he'll handle this himself and letting them be as scared as they want, since he has no power to do anything anyway. The two noblemen cry and clutch their hands together in fear. Now that he's sent Evan to the Information Guild, our reluctant patron stands elegantly in the ballroom, scouting for noble news with a glass of wine. He takes a bite of his tart, unbothered by his surroundings. Two noblemen whisper to each other near a decorative pillar, and Alon closes his eyes, enchanting his hearing ability with mana. He overhears their hushed conversation about Duke Altia and Count Zenonia trying to create a faction, forming an alliance. Our accidental leader dismisses it as unimportant, deciding he doesn't even need to worry about that, because the two mastermind families don't get along, so their alliance won't last long. He takes another bite of his egg tart, delighting in its taste, but then overhears something even more surprising. The head of the faction isn't one of those two. The noblemen whisper, wondering who it could be. Alon reacts in shock, dropping his egg tart as a piece of food drops to the floor. He looks stunned in the middle of the ballroom, wondering, what kind of nonsense is that? He recalls having met Duke Altia and Zenonia's daughter, but never the current Count Zenonia. Clutching his forehead, stressed, he wonders how such a rumor spread, sighing that he should have expected as much. Alon looks up with an uneasy expression. Carmen Comalin, a noble from another country, stands smiling next to Alon, greeting him. Alon remembers that nobles from other countries would attend the grand social gathering. Carmen looks sinister and jealous, claiming he heard Alon became count by luck, and is so jealous he had to see Alon, asking what his secret is, to which Alon silently thinks, "Wow, these days even twisted Dio and UTS can talk, huh?" Two noblemen confront Carmen and Alon, demanding to know what he just said. One nobleman angrily asks if Carmen is talking about a noble of their Asteria kingdom. Carmen looks panicked and confused, insisting that's not what he meant, wondering why he can't bully Alon. He flashes back, posing confidently, believing no woman could ever refuse him, and trying to appeal to a woman by complimenting her beauty. But Rodiger's daughter walks away, rejecting him and canceling their marriage, leaving Carmen annoyed at having come this far for nothing. Our jealous suitor saw Alon as an immature noble with no connections, a perfect target to vent on. Noblemen stand over a cowering Carmen, declaring Alon has been a long ally of theirs. Duke Rodiger and Marquis Mardanio look sternly, stating that Carmen's actions mean Duke Comalin, the pillar of Ashutalan, looks down on the Asteria kingdom. Count Palin stands with Rodiger and Mardanio, demanding to know why Carmen is acting so disrespectfully. Duke Rodiger and Count Palin confront a humiliated Carmen, who denies it, but Count Palin asks if there's any other reason for his disrespectful address. Rodiger and Mardanio loom over a trembling Carmen, who apologizes, but Count Palin clarifies that the main point is his condescending attitude. Alon looks thoughtful and slightly bored, internally wondering how unlikable Carmen must be for these three powerful figures, who barely know him, to protect him like this, while finding the scene familiar. Three noblemen intimidate a kneeling Carmen, demanding more than sorry, reminding Alon of a similar past experience. Alon, in a military cap, looks distressed, realizing, this is bringing back some traumatic memories. A man runs away in distress in his memory, apologizing for his discourtesy. Back in the ballroom, Alon looks confused and intimidated as the three older noblemen ask if he's all right, making him wonder what's wrong with everyone today and admit he's getting scared. Our accidental leader thinks about the dangerous implications. Seeing those important figures acting like this, the rumor must be true, and once Altia and Zenonia jump into politics, things will get bothersome. He contemplates whether to let them know the rumor is baseless. Two noblemen corner Alon, saying they haven't had any proper conversations with him, but they understand he must be very busy. 3 noblemen surround Alon, offering him gifts and asking him to accept theirs. At dawn, at Duke Roediger's annex mansion, Alon sits across from a woman in a black veil in a dimly lit, ornate room, asking how it went. A man with a mustache looks directly at the viewer, explaining that light gifts between nobles are just greetings, but important materials like artifacts carry great meaning, especially for someone wanting to enter a faction. Presenting a gift to the head of a faction means acceptance, and the woman in the black veil expresses joy at being accepted. Alon sits across from Duchess Altia in a lit mansion room, who welcomes Marquis Mardanio, confirming they can now officially share the same purpose. The political intrigue around our black-haired count's son continues, as a mysterious veiled woman confirms with his envoy, "I'm glad that we share the same goal," asking what the other nobles said. Her associate confirms it's an honor, and that everyone willingly accepted, apparently after Duke Altia, known for his reclusive nature, tipped off only a select few, clearly selecting the necessary cards. The veiled woman, holding a chess piece, believes this is the current of politics at work, with nobles bribing their way in, while another man sweats, knowing he has to catch this opportunity. She smiles, now ready to make their move in earnest, as the 4th day of the banquet arrives. Our reluctant patron, Alon, holds a small gift box, reflecting that they must be treating him well because of the baseless rumor connecting him to Altia and Zenonia. But he's just thinking that it's good for him, and they won't take these gifts back right. Suddenly he gets a hiccup, and the man with the eye patch tells him something shocking. An outer god has appeared in the northern region. Caliburn is in absolute chaos, with speculation linking the amethyst to the outer god, according to ancient literature, and asks about additional requested information. Alon confirms information about northern Ashutalan, planning to visit the place on their way. He decides they're heading to Caliburn. The man with the eye patch asks if he's heading north, and Alon says they'll talk in detail on their way there. Distressed, our resourceful game master clutches his head, wishing it wouldn't happen, recognizing these catastrophic beings as outer gods, similar to the 5 deadly sins. He explains that with divine descent, you never know exactly which outer god will appear or when, which is why he tried to get information quickly. He didn't think it would happen this fast, though, knowing from hundreds of cases in his gameplay exactly where this is going. The allied kingdoms will fall apart, pushing each other into ruin through foolish wars on polluted lands, which means his life will be over in a second. Our black-haired count's son knows that after descending, an outer god takes several months to stabilize and awaken into an incarnate deity, unable to fully wield its divine power during that time. So waiting for that moment is the best course of action. He carefully writes and seals a letter, knowing he has to do this even if it's not guaranteed. A week later, a knight approaches Alon, delivering a report that makes him look surprised. He tells them that their next schedule in the north will be delayed by 2 weeks. That's because he's found Oliven, the protagonist of the turn-based roguelike RPG, Psychedelia. Alon notes that a protagonist is still a protagonist, looking exactly like the illustration, but he has to wonder, he's a boy, right? Because Oliven is just too pretty. Oliven, striking a pose, cheerfully introduces himself, while Alon realizes he's facing the very character he used to play, knowing Oliven will become stronger and more famous. It feels strange, but our reluctant patron has a plan. He hands a heavy money bag to a bewildered Oliven, who asks, "Isn't this gold?" Then Alon calls Evan to bring more. Evan dumps a large case of potions, followed by numerous other gifts, telling Oliven, "These are all yours." A shocked Oliven can only ask, "All of those?" Alon leans in to explain that it's an investment, as he's brought everything that would help the main character grow in the early game, because Oliven will be huge in the future. So he urges, "Grow up quickly and defeat the outer god in my place." Oliven humps, and Alon thinks this is good enough treatment, hoping the kid likes him now. Alon tells him it's the name of the sponsor he should thank when he becomes successful, to which Oliven enthusiastically responds, "Thank you, Count." He then runs toward the carriage, waving goodbye and promising to remember this. Inside the carriage, the man with the eye patch asks our black-haired Count's son if it's really fine to just leave without a proper conversation. Alon explains he's in a hurry and doesn't have time to build a relationship, so he's just left the protagonist running on auto-grind mode. His companion observes the dense mana surging around Oliven, and although his attire was plain, it looked like he was wearing artifacts as well. Alon reflects that especially because he's the main character, the stronger he is, the better for him. He's not really worried since Oliven is one of the few characters with a kind personality in this desperate, dark fantasy world, but he still asks his companion, "Do you think he would even want to meet me?" The man with the eye patch replies, Maybe." Back in his carriage, our resourceful game master sorts through even more gift boxes, explaining to Evan that these are the bribes he'll give to his future lifeline. 10 days later, the capital city of Kurthem in the night nation of Caliburn welcomes our black-haired count's son, Alon, as their carriage arrives at the northern gate. The man with the eye patch yawns, exhausted from the long journey, and Alon acknowledges that a long trip is bound to be tiring. A resourceful game master still clutches his mysterious red-gemmed necklace, while inside the carriage, surrounded by treasure chests, he hopes Deus likes the gifts, feeling like a father wanting to give his son everything. His companion announces it should be their turn soon. The man with the eye patch exits the carriage, promising to be back quickly, and Alon rests inside, relieved that things should go easy from now on. Suddenly, the eye patch knight returns, announcing, Count, we have a problem." Alon asks what, learning that knights told them to stand aside all of a sudden. A reluctant patron exits the carriage to confront the knights, who immediately recognize him as Count Palatio. Knight introduces himself as Vurin, the fourth sword and direct disciple of Master Knight Fiola. But Alon, already irritated by the mention of Fiola, questions what Vurin wants, bringing the knights along. Vurin smugly claims Alon owes him a debt, which our black-haired Count's son denies, making him realize it must be Carmen. Vurin confirms it, explaining Alon managed to seriously get on his friend's bad side, implying he received a magical orb message from Carmen, shouting to beat Alon until he's a cripple. Vurin asks if Alon needs more abyssal entity to raise his skills, then dismissively gestures while stating he received goods from that guy, so he has to look like he cares. Alon realizes Carmen just ran away, leaving this mess. Vurin mockingly offers, "I might let you go." Alon raises his sword, saying he has nothing to lose, as Vurin details his research. Alon is from the Kingdom of Asteria, which has little influence in the Alliance and has no connections in Caliburn. A resourceful game master mutters that they really are sticking to their own kind. Vurin swings his sword with a crazed, ecstatic smile, while Evan looks determined, ready to fight and trust his master. But suddenly, a dark figure grabs Alon by the neck, lifting him off the ground, causing him to recoil in pain as his sword drops. Alon struggles, asking, "WHWHO?" The mysterious dark figure, Deus Macalian, demands, "What do you think you're doing? You dare harm MY benefactor?" Vurin wasn't aware of one critical thing. Count Palatio had a very powerful ally. Deus strikes, knocking a knight to the ground, then ruthlessly stomps on another, who pleads for mercy, while the narrator reveals Deus became a hero known as Swordless. Deus stands over the fallen knight, warning them not to move. He declares that if anyone dares to move an inch, he'll leave the consequences up to their imagination. He forcefully slams another knight into the ground, causing an impact blast. Our black-haired Count's son looks on, identifying the knight as Deus Macalian, who looms over the fallen, injured knight, thanking the circumstances that prevent him from killing them here. Deus leaps through the air to deliver another strike, creating a large impact of debris and energy, leaving the knight battered and bleeding. Alon watches calmly, noting, "That's a good beating." Deus then glares toward Alon, asking what he thinks he's doing to his benefactor, making Alon wonder if he just heard that right. Our reluctant patron, flustered, thought Deus would be thanking him for his childhood, but he'd completely forgotten him and wouldn't even greet him. Alon feels like he's been rewarded for raising his son, musing that Deus is such a handsome guy, wondering who his sponsor is before realizing it was him and how handsome Deus has grown. As the battered knight screams in pain, Alon wonders, why is MY son such a sweetheart? But then, our resourceful game master thinks, isn't Deus going a bit too far? He remembers that Deus was destined to become one of the 5 deadly sins. Deus stands large and dominant over the scattered knights, then turns and bows to Alon, smiling as he offers, "Please allow ME to guide YOU." The war against Culkin, the Great's clan, climaxes with a mighty sword plunging into the snowy ground, as fallen soldiers litter the battlefield, and an unknown voice announces the annihilation of Culkin's clan. Captain Delman celebrates his victory, raising his sword high, and his Crimson Flame Knight Order cheers loudly for their triumph, their celebration echoing through the snowy mountains. As knights discuss returning for maintenance, Delman internally gloats about his significant achievement, believing he won't be outdone by whoever just became a master knight. He recalls how he secured this victory by deceiving Culkin, luring him out alone with an infiltration force, and then annihilating the entire clan, ensuring a clear result for this expedition. However, a soldier reports that Culkin's body vanished during the battle, likely hidden by barbarians, though Delman dismisses it, certain the poison he administered would have already killed him. Confident that his triumph is complete, he looks forward to reporting his achievement back in Caliburn, but suddenly stops, his expression turning to surprise as snow swirls around him, sensing something amiss. Terrifying aura washes over the snowy battlefield, filled with the bodies of fallen soldiers, and a warrior with glowing red eyes simply states, "DELMAN." Delman looks panicked, drawing his flaming sword as a powerful aura crashes down on him. A warrior with red eyes stares intensely, casting a dark shadow, and snaps, "Why did you defile a great and sacred dual SDAKDON honor?" This is a terror that devours even a superhuman who can sever hundreds of lives with a single sword strike, and Delman, trembling with fear, cries out, "You're not KULKAN. Who are you? Answer me." The warrior lunges at the knight, creating a large fiery explosion, and asks if it wasn't Delman's fault for trusting the word duel on a battlefield. The impact from the attack cracks the icy ground beneath the soldiers, and the warrior looks down at the fallen Delman, offering him one last chance. "Duel ME." But Delman, desperate, orders his knights to prepare for battle, and the warrior declares, "A mortal without honor." His hand glows with blue energy as he proclaims, "I shall not grant such barbarism an honorable death." Then soldiers collapse and writhe in agony on the ground, screaming that it hurts, begging for death as the pain overwhelms them. The warrior slams his hand into the ground, shattering it with a powerful shockwave, sending knights flying through the air like rag dolls as rocks explode from the earth. He punches a knight in the chest, creating another shockwave, leaving them bloodied, screaming, and writhing on the ground in excruciating pain. Dressing the injured soldiers who are begging to be killed, the warrior declares them all savages of this place. He stands before the fallen knights, saying they are made with the dead who were destined their deaths, and welcomes them to his bloody Colosseum, proclaiming himself the god of all barbarians. The figure is Ultaurus, father of duels, who personally wishes to bestow an honorable death upon them, demanding they prove that you aren't savages slash through a duel. Meanwhile, a knight carries a wounded comrade through the sky, far from the brutal scene, as we cut to a forest setting where soldiers stand near a carriage. Two knights look on in shock, asking if Deus, the swordless himself, is actually bowing his head. They recall that he received no punishment for beating up the second prince for harassing his sister, and would never be polite to anyone other than the king, making his bow to a foreign count truly shocking. As our black-haired count's son looks down at the kneeling Deus Macalian, they wonder who Count Palatio could possibly be to command such respect. Our strategic noble gestures toward an ornate carriage, asking Deus to get in, knowing their public display is drawing too much attention. Deus respectfully insists Alon go ahead, promising to follow with the carriage. A short while later, our calm count stands next to the carriage, noticing Deus's massive mansion, and observes the sheer scale of the building where his powerful ward resides. As they walk in silence through a hallway, Alon feels suffocated by the quiet, wondering if Deus is uncomfortable with him. Sighing, Alon decides to get straight to the point, believing it's the best way to show his respect and consideration, while Deus turns his head, listening intently. Standing in a doorway, Alon states the reason for his visit. "I have a request for you." Deus confirms that's correct, and internally notes that it's not an order. Before Alon can speak further, Deus turns away to walk, suggesting they continue the conversation after taking a seat. Alon sits, looking weary, and notes that usually the host sits in the highest seat, but Deus offered it to him, making our benefactor wonder if Deus truly treats him like a father. Deus stares intently across from Alon, who looks nervous. Then, to Alon's complete surprise, Deus quickly agrees to his unstated request, responding, "Of course," / "gladly." Still looking serious, Alon knows this next part is the difficult one. He asks Deus, "Would it be possible for me to borrow the famous Ring of the Mad One from Caliburn's treasury?" A subordinate reports to the vice-captain that the escort mission is done, and a distinguished guest is coming to Caliburn, causing much excitement. Our black-haired Count's son Alon, meanwhile, gives instructions to delay northern schedules by 2 weeks, because his own benefactor will be arriving soon, a fact he relays with a rare, soft smile. This rare, soft smile makes one subordinate nervous, while a young purple-haired person looks on in shock. Our stoic schemer Alon, however, is focused on making a highly unreasonable request, to borrow the Ring of the Mad One from Caliburn's treasury, a move that would put him deeply in debt to the royal family, but which he insists is absolutely essential for his current plan. Just then, Evan bursts through the door, and our black-haired Count's son declares it great timing. Evan confirms he's there to help. Alon then reveals a table covered in gift-wrapped boxes, saying he especially recommends this shoestring tie as a popular item to improve the atmosphere, having chosen it himself after thorough consideration for his benefactor. When Evan just sits there silently, Alon asks why he isn't opening them, realizing his gift barrage failure. But the mysterious purple-haired man is thinking about much more important things, loyalty to his benefactor, even declaring, "You dare harm my benefactor." Our black-haired Count's son Alon, however, is focused on the ring, declaring he will bring the Ring of the Mad One right away. He clarifies its location to the royal treasury, which a subordinate says would normally take a week to retrieve, making it difficult. Alon comments on someone going that far, assuming it's a joke, but the purple-haired man with the eye patch is very serious, asking if he should start right away. He understands. He's trying. As our stoic schemer walks down the hall, a small girl in pink runs excitedly toward Deus, calling him brother. Deus waves back happily, and the two of them dance together in chibi form, while Alon looks on. In the game, only a brief glimpse was given of how she died, and seeing Silly in person now, she looks just like Deus. She reaches for his hand, but then Deus pulls Silly behind him, declaring the man is not a brother, he's a mister. The man with the eye patch is shocked, while Alon realizes Deus cherishes his sister more than he expected. Deus orders the mister not to talk to her, prompting the man to complain he was just trying to say hello. But then Alon has a sudden realization, an honest epiphany, that Deus's deep loyalty is because our accidental benefactor saved Silly, a fact he completely missed while focusing on preventing Deus from becoming a sin. He laughs, bumping heads with an imaginary version of himself, asking if he's going too far with his self-congratulation. Silly approaches Alon, asking, "You must be Count Palatio, right?" She then thanks him for ordering Evan to save her, while Deus quickly corrects her, reminding her it's Mr. Evan. Alon, meanwhile, internally rationalizes his actions, saying he just did what he had to prevent Deus from becoming a killing machine, even making sure they would meet at the best timing. The little girl takes Alon's hand with a warm smile, then leans her head against his arm in pure gratitude. And though his intentions were purely pragmatic, our black-haired Count's son Alon admits that receiving such genuine gratitude from someone actually feels great. Just then, a man holds an open jewelry box with a simple ring and chain, announcing, "I have brought the ring." Alon is stunned, asking, "It's only been a day, THOUGH?" Our accidental benefactor holds the chain, looking at the man with the eye patch, still amazed it was only one day. The man looks worried as he speaks to Alon. Then comes the truly wild news. The second prince, who was nitpicking HIM, received a few slaps from DEUS. Our stoic schemer is utterly shocked by the image of a hand delivering a powerful slap. Meanwhile, on the northern expedition with the solar eclipse knights, a carriage with their flag moves through snowy terrain. But 2 weeks later, terrible news pours in from Caliburn's northern border, revealing a bloody dead soldier. Mysterious figure with long white hair stands amidst dark, glowing magical energy. Officers in a snowy camp discuss the situation, asking if retreat is truly necessary. They argue heatedly at a war table, confirming that soldiers are severely wounded, and with the first sword in seclusion, they have no winning chance against them. One man clasps his hands tightly in frustration. An officer observes his worried colleagues around the map. Fiola, the fourth sword of Caliburn, leans over the table. The outer god is sweeping their bases with his undead forces. The third sword, Delman, is dead at the eastern base, and the second sword, Kiriana, is severely wounded at the western base. The mysterious white-haired figure looms in the shadows. Deus confirms the wounded were devoured by ominous mana. The ominous aura keeps catching their gaze, making retreat seem like the only option. Deus, ever observant, detects smoke and finds a small fire where a man in a cloak is cooking sweet potatoes, making Deus wonder, where did he get THOSE from? Meanwhile, with an intense gaze, Deus sharply rejects pleas to help the wounded, saying, "I can't, UFOOLS. I said the treatment is done and there's nothing more I can do. I'm only here to investigate the ritual of the barbarian." But a woman with blue hair confronts him, arguing that people come before investigation, begging for just one more time. Deus, however, insists all they can do is watch over him, and he stands unyielding, looking at the woman with long blue hair. Our calculating Count's son Alon finds Yutia in a snowy field and summons her, which leaves our young mage looking completely shocked. Alon just thinks about why she's there, while Yutia, clearly stressed, tries to explain that she doesn't have the medicine he needs on hand, and it takes a long time to make. Our black-haired schemer just sighs, making it sound like a pleading request, which shocks Yutia into declaring that she can totally do it. Alon, however, casually mentions their finances aren't great, so payment might be delayed, and Yutia, despite being the vice tower master, accepts a single gold coin, laughing, which leaves her subordinates utterly bewildered that she just got lowballed by hundreds of gold but is still smiling. He then runs off through the snow to deliver the medicine as soon as possible, leaving her subordinates awestruck, impressed by our protagonist's awe-inspiring presence. Suddenly, a hostile red aura fills the room, and a man reacts, realizing it's an attack. On a brutal, snowy battlefield, soldiers are clashing, and combatants fall amidst purple magic effects. But Yutia leaps into action, freezing enemies with her icicle spell, encasing multiple soldiers in ice. She continues to cast a powerful area of effect ice spell from a distance, while another warrior attacks enemies with a purple energy blade, until they all notice a powerful, ominous presence arriving. A massive lightning bolt strikes the ground, creating a crater and exuding overwhelming despair. The blue-skinned, white-haired warrior, Ulculus, known as an outer god, strikes, creating a glowing energy blast, which a warrior in white barely parries with their own blade. Ulculus mocks him for abandoning honor and forsaking his soul, refusing him an honorable death, and then strikes the warrior in white down, leaving Lord Fiola collapsed and bloody on the ground as others watch in horror. Our desperate defender Alon Palatio then steps forward, surrounded by golden runes, and invokes the Oath of Calgunias, demanding the duel of Babylonia. Ulculus laughs maniacally as purple lightning erupts around him, grinning down at Alon and welcoming the strange challenge because he knows the ancient oath, before declaring his bloody Colosseum is open and no one can interfere. Ulculus accepts the holy duel under the great oath, and Alon, feeling the crushing pressure, realizes he underestimated his opponent, who is already on the verge of becoming a living god. He sweats, exhausted, knowing that outer gods grow stronger as they descend, reaching the strength of the 5 deadly sins when complete, and he's only standing thanks to his potion of extraordinariness, making this his final opportunity before Ulculus fully awakens. With the ancient rule of the Great Duel of Babylonia being turn-based, Alon and Ulculus prepare to begin. Ulculus, as the challenged, takes the first strike, warning Alon he will hear the Song of Destruction. Soldiers panic, running and scattering, but Alon stands his ground as the next rule appears. The defender is forbidden to move during their turn or outside of it. Ulculus praises our Count's son for knowing of honor, and prepares a massive punch surrounded by crackling energy. As the defender, Alon knows this is his turn, but a simple defense won't mean anything against such an attack. Though in a dark void, he prepares his defenses, manipulating mana with commands like fixation, condense, enhancement, in depth, deciding to use all his mana for today to protect himself from just this one attack. Ultilis unleashes a massive red energy strike from a distance, which Alon attempts to defend against, as the red energy collides violently with his barrier. A violent explosion of energy erupts where the attack hits, leaving the ground cracked and devastated by the impact. Alon and an ally watch the aftermath of the explosion, and even Yutia looks on in shock that Alon survived. Alon kneels inside a glowing red magic circle, battered but alive. Yutia quickly shows him two different potions, reminding him of the potion of extraordinariness and the potion of remithian, which blocks intense pain. Alon drinks the potion, feeling its great effect and acknowledging it's why he's still standing. He holds the bottle, noting that as planned, there isn't a single scratch on it, and pours the high-grade potion over his body to help him get back on his feet, even if it won't heal him completely. With intense eyes, he focuses, then holds up his hand, activating the Ring of the Mad One, invoking its restriction. Finally, our black-haired schemer Alon stands ready, his hand clenched, as it's his time to attack. Our beleaguered count's son, Alon Palatio, knew he had to deliberately drag the outer god into a duel to limit his actions with specific rules. He admits that only by using the pendant of reincarnation and a healing potion did he barely survive Ultilis's first hit, still wounded. Alon raises his hand, activating the Ring of the Mad One, which requires him to be 1 foot in the grave to unleash its restriction. Giant, glowing ocular magical construct flares into existence around him, and Alon, focused, declares that the restriction is complete. Bright golden magical light flares around him, and Alon faces Ultilis in the magical duel arena. Knowing his opponent's sacred regard for duels means he won't defend or interrupt. He coughs, exhausted, remembering that in the game, Ultilis would simply take the first attack, and his enhancement spell took off some of the time limit instead of costing a turn. Our tired tactician then begins to cast a powerful restrictive spell, declaring the first restriction. When magic is used in the land of extreme cold, it must twist the laws of the world. He looks upward, hand raised, channeling the spell, then points his finger, projecting a bolt of purple lightning with intense focus. Alon stands, channeling a powerful purple lightning bolt at Ultilis, condensing the magic, and with a glowing wristband, he shouts death. A bright magical construct descends toward the god Ultilis, as Alon invokes the third restriction. When magic is used against a god, may it twist the laws of the world. He stares intensely, pouring all his focus into the magical attack. Powerful purple energy beam strikes the god Ultilis in the distance as Alon declares the frontline of silence and the fourth restriction. This final restriction states that when the magic is used against Ultilis, the great god of duels, the laws of the world must twist further, and a massive magical explosion engulfs the center of the arena, with energy crackling violently across the arena, scattering debris. Alon stands in the middle of the dissipating energy field, desperately hoping for a success, staring ahead with a determined yet weary expression, knowing it's a success if Ultilis is gone within the first hit. However, Ultilis remains standing, revealing a gaping hole in his chest, his lower body still rooted in the arena dust. The mythical creature grins maniacally, acknowledging our protagonist with a simple, "You're strong." Alon looks shocked and exhausted as the realization of his failure hits him. This was his final strike. He stares wide-eyed in disbelief, comprehending that his attack truly failed to defeat his opponent. Close-up of his belt shows it's glowing with fading magical energy, signaling he's drained all the mana he piled up. Ultilis laughs, complimenting Alon's potential, noting he carries on the will and already possesses the class. Alon looks up, confused and awestruck, wondering if this is hellfire. The mythical creature sits amidst the flames, looking satisfied after the duel, calling it an excellent duel. Our count's son watches as his opponent prepares to fade away. Ultilis ponders the potential of the humans he encountered, deciding the black and blue ones are worth keeping an eye on. As he yields the duel, a magical artifact falls toward Alon Palatio, gifted along with the authority. Ultilis floats above Alon, bestowing a final message. He who remembers the hand signs and mysteries of the great forgotten gods shall carry their will by remembering them. The creature transforms, revealing a monstrous, shadowy form, warning Alon to call his real name when the usurpers break free from their shackles, not the epithet steeped in falsehood. He reveals his true face before fading into energy. Alon Palatio stands alone in the empty arena, holding the artifact he was given. Later, a horse-drawn carriage travels through a snowy landscape, and inside, Alon questions Yutia, who quickly corrects herself that he is a third circle count. Yutia, however, is panicked, shaking her head and crying, swearing she didn't see anything blue or black this time either. She quickly jumps out of the carriage, thanking Alon for letting her leave, even though he never told her to. Alon sighs, leaning against the carriage wall. He then looks at the Belt of the Forgotten One, an accessory from the game that amplifies attack damage 2 times, but also damage taken, realizing he's seen it before. He examines the inscription, a phrase he's never seen, wondering if he'll find something out when he arrives in Kahara. Deus Macaelian then appears near our generous patron Alon in the carriage, asking what he needs. Deus then casually asks if he should kill Yutia, surprising Alon, who notes that Deus has gotten even more reckless. Yutia, who is still nearby, senses the killing intent and looks nervous. 2 weeks later in Kurtham, the capital of Caliburn, Deus reports the subjugation results to the king. Alon and Deus stand outside near a carriage, parting ways. Alon thinks about all the gifts he received from the king of Caliburn, which are great since he literally invested all his money into saving his life. Alon asks Deus if he can also become strong like him, pointing at a status tag, looking confused and asking what it even means. Meanwhile, 5 children with unique appearances stand together in a dark environment. Deus is shown practicing sword fighting, creating multiple magical slashes in the air, confirming that with his talent, he will become as strong as he desires. He simply says, "Really?" Alon and Deus stand near the carriage in the town square. Alon tells him not to worry too much. Our count's son looks thoughtful with a close-up on his face, then walks away, looking back over his shoulder, asking if Deus thinks he orders his family around. Deus turns his head, looking surprised by the question. Soldiers salute Alon as horse carriages arrive in the square. Alon sits slumped on a carriage bench, downcast, thinking about how until now, Deus might have thought he had some ulterior motive behind his sponsorship, despite his original intention to stop the awakening of the 5 deadly sins and his truly pure goodwill. A wide shot shows a large Gothic-style building, perhaps a cathedral. Alon sits alone in a room, surrounded by many gift-wrapped boxes. He scratches his head, sighing. Alon looks thoughtful, touching his ear, contemplating something. He sits alone in the dark, gift-filled room, sighing while reflecting on the front line of silence. He nervously taps his fingers together, deep in thought. Alon looks pensive, clearing his throat. He sits in his room, surrounded by boxes, looking troubled as he thinks. Family, huh? A flashback shows a Chibai Alon sitting with another character, roasting sweet potatoes over a fire, saying they taste great. An abstract, glowing blue swirling ring of energy floats in the darkness. Terrifying close-up reveals a dark figure's single glowing eye in the shadows. Tired tactician Alon finally returns to his Grand Palatio estate, only to find his office completely buried under 3 months of accumulated paperwork. The sentient stacks of documents, however, are far from sympathetic, practically welcoming him to the room of backlogged work, which sends our overworked count running in a Chibai panic, briefly mistaking it for his bedroom. Still resigned to his fate, he buckles down to tackle the mountains of documents before allowing himself any rest. In between the work, he manages to spend some time nurturing his rescued children, serving them toast exactly to their liking. But even with the break, the sheer exhaustion from his adventures and responsibilities leaves him slumped on the sofa, only able to conjure a small, delicate snowflake. His mind, however, is consumed by the cryptic terms left behind by the outer god, Ulchalus, pondering why Ulchalus's true name sounds like an Eastern deity, and questioning his unusual appearance and disappearance. The mystery clearly vexes him, leaving our tired tactician stressed and scratching his head. He flips through documents, searching for answers, even checking his psychedelia notebook, which details secret dungeons he can't yet visit. Evan notices a chill in the air, asking if it's his magic, and our overworked count admits his cold magic has become quite useful, a payoff from all his vacation research. Evan, however, has more news, revealing that something is happening in Colony, which catches Alon completely by surprise. Meanwhile, a different kind of meeting is underway, as a white-haired woman concludes the agenda for the Blue Moon semi-annual gathering, where Deus, surprisingly, takes center stage, enthusiastically recounting his encounter with the Great Moon. His uncharacteristic loquaciousness leaves others visibly shocked, with one blonde girl exclaiming her disbelief that Deus is actually talking. 50 minutes pass, and the other members grow increasingly frustrated as Deus continues his detailed monologue, describing Alon's instant death strike against Ulchalus as something utterly unpredictable. Yutia eventually has to try and stop him, after he's gone on about how astonishing it was that Alon was preparing his real attack. Finally, the white-haired woman declares it over, but not before 2 more hours have passed. That day, the Blue Moon meeting sets a new record for its duration, clocking in at 3 full hours. Back at the estate, our accidental faction leader Alon stands amidst a mountain of gift-wrapped boxes, holding a golden goblet and a card. It's a gushing letter from Baron Pirima, who credits Alon with hyping up the entire northern region and Caliburn. Alon, ever the pragmatist and former salary slave, wisely decides that if people are giving gifts, you take them without a word, planning to save it all for his emergency fund. A week later, Evan observes that connecting with a master knight certainly yields quite a bounty. A reluctant patron, however, still holds a grudge about his past obscurity. Alon now approaches the Grand Council building, panicking that he's late for his very first council meeting. He worries about the scrutiny he'll face if he's late, as Evan bids him a safe trip. He's followed by a line of men, almost as if they're lining up behind the count. Our nervous noble peeks into the hall, and is surprised to find he isn't actually late. Alon quickly notes the seating arrangements, royalists on the left and nobles on the right, intending to take a quiet seat in the back. But then 2 men suddenly appear who were outside, catching him off guard. The men stare intensely as he walks past, trying to find a seat. To his annoyance, he ends up in the front row, realizing other nobles dodged the prime seats by putting him there. He begrudgingly understands, knowing there's no upside to sitting with faction heads, Soon enough, our accidental faction leader is completely bored, then utterly confused by talk of a Cal faction, which he's completely unaware of. He spots two women sitting together, piecing together that the Zenonia and Altia alliance must have morphed into this new group. The rapid political shifts leave him mentally exhausted and genuinely wondering what's even happening. Then, to his utter shock, he's addressed as the representative. He suddenly understands that he's been named the leader of this newly formed shadow faction, and it's him. Our accidental faction leader laments that if it weren't for this, he'd already be on his way to Colony. Meanwhile, a mysterious young man in a black balaclava stares directly ahead, perhaps foreshadowing future events. High in a snowy, desolate landscape, a mysterious cloaked figure watches, smirking as a massive crack forms in the icy ground, wondering how far he will go. Meanwhile, Alon is overwhelmed at the formal council meeting, trying to process if any of this is real as he's pressed for comments as the new representative. Our bewildered count grips his head, stressed that he can't possibly become a villainous mastermind faction leader overnight, comparing it to a light novel. The meeting, however, proceeds without his input, with people applauding him under a congratulatory banner, clearly mistaking his days for statesmanship. Bored and thoughtful, Alon wonders if he's merely a figurehead in this whole bizarre situation. Nearby, the true architects, Duchess Altia and Countess Zenonia, elegantly congratulate each other on what they believe was a perfect plan. Our unwitting patron is completely dizzy and distressed, realizing he's only had a couple of conversations with these women, and actually wonders if he has a split personality. He gathers more information from them, learning that he, Alon Palatio, apparently ordered the alliance that formed the Cal faction, and that nobles sent him gifts to be accepted. Alon, utterly horrified, vehemently swears he never told them to do any of this. He then remembers some letters he wrote, where his blunt writing style to Kalia could easily be misinterpreted as cold commands. He also uncovers a truly bizarre fan letter ending with an IWBU lots. The women, however, are not amused by the idea of a misunderstanding after receiving so many gifts, chillingly suggesting that he should just die. Our bewildered count internally laments that the game's characters have truly terrible personalities, especially the Zenonias. He quickly states his intention to take the position for a while, then retire. Then, trying to sound cool, he declares he'll start by sweeping up the underworld. Immediately, he makes a hasty escape before they can ask any questions, internally admitting he doesn't know what he's talking about. As Alon prepares to board his carriage with Evan, the women discuss how Alon's orders mean he's taken control of their area's underworld. They find his sudden move interesting, toasting to what he will show them next. Meanwhile, a hooded agent watches Alon's carriage pass by in the night, reminded of the leader's rule to avoid overwhelming enemies, even for a huge reward. The agent, a swordmaster-level assassin from the Federation Kingdom, enters Duke Komalin's mansion. Their Lord Carmen, a purple-haired man and the tyrant of Ashutalan, waits. The agent swiftly silences the guards, allowing no rats during his mission. Carmen, impressed, confirms the agent's strength. He then offers the agent an astronomical price, 4 abyss entities, to eliminate Count Palatio. The agent, knowing their power, is shocked. He contemplates how much stronger he would become with such items. The agent accepts, leaping out the window, vowing Alon won't live a peaceful life after having seemingly looked down on him. The agent then confronts Duke Komalin, Carmen's father, to confirm his non-interference. Komalin, citing orders not to oppose the ducal house, pretends not to hear anything, turning a blind eye to the assassination. The kneeling man explains that the Cal faction, with Count Palatio at its head, is growing massive, threatening Komalin's underworld. Duke Komalin agrees it's great timing for Alon to be eliminated. The agent flies through the night, closing in on Alon's carriage, excited by the thought of the abyss entities soon being his. With a glowing fountain pen held over the carriage, he whispers, "No hard feelings, Count Palatio." But then, a powerful magical beam suddenly strikes the ground. The agent lies wounded and gasping on the ground. A blue-haired figure stands over him, shushing him and calmly explaining he's just wasting his energy. Figure laughs, walking away with a casual, "No hard feelings." As Alon's carriage continues down the forest road, figures dash overhead. The blue-haired figure, with a chilling smile, declares that if the target wasn't the Count, the agent wouldn't have died to them. The fountain pen flies into the night sky, and a close-up of a grinning mouth with sharp teeth reveals the true nature of Alon's mysterious protector. 5 days after leaving the Grand Council Temple, our black-haired Count's son finds himself boiling alive, sweating through his clothes as the desert heat cooks his lungs. One of his companions, an eye-patch-wearing man, wonders why he isn't practicing that ground-freezing thing he does, but our weary traveler just wants to get to Colony. However, it seems Lion Aguilaris, the Red Magic Tower Master's daughter, has been eyeing him from afar, making our uncomfortable noble even more stressed. She even rounds on him, asking flat out if peeping is his hobby, to which Alon Palatio quickly denies any such interest. He complains to Evan that she's incredibly annoying, wondering if she ever gets tired, but realizes messing with the daughter of a hot-tempered madman is probably a bad idea. Lion, meanwhile, can't believe he only has enough mana to reach the second circle, yet supposedly stopped an outer god. Suddenly, the caravan is ambushed, with a robed figure using a chain weapon to strike down bandits, and the merchants scream that they've been surrounded. The blood sand bandits attack, grabbing Lion and threatening to hurt her if the merchants don't hand over their goods. The merchant group leader watches helplessly as the Red Magic Tower Master's daughter is taken hostage. As Lion struggles, hyperventilating from the trauma, her breathing becomes erratic and panic overwhelms her. Just then our ice mage appears, casting a freezing spell that calms her hyperventilation, and Lion can only stare in disbelief, unable to grasp how Count Palatio is here. Alon Palatio unleashes a massive wave of frigid cold, trapping the bandits in a whirlwind of ice magic. Lion is still held by her captor, but she sees that at least 3 spells are connected, creating complex array structures that baffle her. As one bandit rushes at him, Alon snaps, "Flash, CRYOSDASIS," freezing the bandit in midair with barely a thought. Then Alon Palatio claps his hands together, activating an annihilation spell, and gives the remaining bandits a chance to get lost, which they swiftly take. Lion watches the whole thing in shock and fear, barely able to process what she just saw. Later around the campfire, the merchants thank Alon profusely, offering him premium jerky and anything he wants. Our accidental leader, however, is lost in thought, pondering the nature of his magic. He realizes his ice magic utilizes spatial, cold, and maintenance magic simultaneously, transforming his surroundings. He checks the conditions for his magic: extreme cold environment, near-death state, or facing a god, especially the great god of duels, Ultalrus, all reduce his magic ability. Touching his chest, Alon Palatio acknowledges he has work to do on these conditions. Soon, the hooded figures who were previously annoyed by him bow in apology, having misunderstood him all this time, and hesitantly ask if they can share something with him. Alon Palatio accepts their apology magnanimously, and soon he's studying magic arrays in books with the eye-patched man and the former bandits. He explains how to designate and twist arrays naturally so they don't get tangled. Finally, they reach the desert nation colony, and the red-clad woman thanks Count Palatio for all his teachings. She says their discussions were enjoyable, and Alon bids them farewell. As he and his companion wait for their carriage, a sudden explosion of magical energy rocks the street, making Alon wonder if the meeting place was nearby. He looks on in alarm as 2 people lie amidst the debris, and magical sparks fly everywhere. Golden energy strikes the ground, creating a massive flash of light and rubble. Then a young beastkin girl with cat ears lands aggressively, enveloped in golden lightning, making Alon watch as magical energy cracks a stone wall. His companion urges Count Palatio to stay back, but the beastkin girl rushes forward and happily embraces Alon Palatio. She calls him her benefactor, excited that he's finally here, and his companion nervously asks if this is Xiaoreng. The beastkin girl confidently declares she just dealt with the thugs targeting his belongings. Xiaoreng then pulls Alon along, proclaiming she's been waiting since his letter, and onlookers recognize her as the Golden Flash and wonder who Alon could be for the mad dog to treat him so warmly. Alon Palatio looks thoughtful as she tugs his arm, and questions if those people she dealt with earlier are even still alive. He explains to his companion that Xiaoreng can use D-rank magic 5 times a day. Our enthusiastic beastkin, Xiaoreng, proudly welcomes Alon to her guild, boasting that only her kin are there, and a male beastkin confirms she was eagerly waiting for him. He grins broadly, telling Alon that Xiaoreng sat at the entrance of colony every single day waiting for him. The guild master, however, complains that Xiaoreng can't sit still, even doing backflips on the table in front of our bewildered patron. She's constantly on the move, and when asked about family, Xiaoreng explains that her kin are like family to her. She even brings up Yutia, saying they're like family, even though they aren't blood relatives. Alon Palatio thinks for a moment, deciding a certain number is pretty high. Then, our accidental mentor asks Evan if he's ready, and Evan gives a thumbs up. Xiaoreng's eyes light up at the sight of presents, asking excitedly if he heard everything just now, to which Alon just smiles. Alon then presents her with a glowing golden gauntlet, crackling with electricity, and Xiaoreng shows it off, exclaiming that Alon makes her race better. Alon Palatio checks his game interface, noting the essence of the Golden Mane tribe and a favorability boost, and he muses that he must be great at raising kids. Our enthusiastic beastkin then playfully carries her benefactor, telling him to rest after his journey and offering to show him to his room. As they walk, she asks Alon about his desert journey, and he mentions that bandit attacks on merchant groups have been a problem. Xiaoreng simply smirks, her eyes glowing, and she decides to handle the matter. The next day, a man falls through the air, defeated, as Xiaoreng stands in the middle of a ruined bandit hideout, electrical energy surging through it as she searches for more. She attacks, confronting a man wielding a glowing sword who claims protection from the strongest Baba Yaga, his brother. He shouts about picking a fight with his brother, but Xiaoreng snaps back that he touched her benefactor first. With an explosion, the problem is solved. Xiaoreng triumphantly declares the problem solved and demands praise, while Alon Palatio looks on with a bewildered expression, wondering what happened overnight. He pets her head, acknowledging that the blood sand bandits had hundreds of night-level fighters, and were a tough quest in the game. Meanwhile, at the Colosseum, a gladiator unleashes a powerful magical strike, and the spectators cheer enthusiastically for one of the 4 Bab Yagas of Colony. The gladiator flexes his arms confidently after winning. Elsewhere, a dark-haired man with a goatee complains about that bastard messing around in Colony, discussing how the death of a brother and revenge would be a perfect excuse the public would accept. A blonde beastkin man sits calmly across from him, saying that the dark-haired man's presence means he's finally ready. He then opens a case, revealing several mysterious metallic objects, a gift from their father, the Seeker, that promises power. As the dark-haired man takes one of the metallic cubes, the blonde beastkin man smiles warmly and proposes an experiment. Back on the road, Alon Palatio and Evan travel across a desert landscape toward the ancient city of Kahara. They arrive at the ruins, and Alon says his thanks to his escort. They walk deeper into a cave with a lantern, approaching a glowing light at the end of the path. Alon and Evan look in awe at the Kahara Tower structure, where Alon looks curiously at a magical seal. A voice emanates from the seal, telling anyone who can hear its words to come to the tower. Our aspiring mage tells Evan he thinks he has to go up alone and will be back. As Alon walks onto a glowing magical rune in a library room, a voice welcomes him, saying that since he can hear its voice, he meets the minimum requirements. Alon Palatio responds that he came after hearing the Wicked One's words, but the shadowy figure looms over him, noting that he knows its true name. The figure says it would be worth taking a chance on him, but he lacks the proper class, so there's nothing it can tell him. It explains that a glowing magical seal illuminates the library, filled with floating books. It says an outer god will descend soon, and he needs to meet the conditions for conversation, then offers to tell him something interesting, since someone slightly better than those who imitate magic has come. The shadowy figure gestures, explaining that magic is the law designated to the world by the Archmage. Demonstrates magic using glowing threads, stating that the magic of this world follows a phrase and a principle. What Alon manifests with the phrase must unfold according to the principle, and he must recite the name for it to be magic. Alon looks up, confused, admitting he's never heard of this principle. The shadowy figure looms forward, its eyes glowing, promising to teach him about it. Our aspiring mage stares up, ready to learn one proper magic. Our black-haired count's son stands before a shadowy figure who begins to teach him about principle and magic, concepts entirely new to our game-savvy survivor, but which he's ready to absorb. Meanwhile, far from Alon's lesson, our golden-maned girl, Xiaoreng, waits anxiously in the scorching desert, muttering that her benefactor is late and wondering if something happened. Suddenly, a shadowy assailant rushes in, a dark-haired man with a menacing smile who declares, "Found you!" Xiaoreng is violently knocked back, and the man Ralga dismisses another ally common while grabbing our wolfkin protector by the head. Golden-maned girl, sparks of electricity surrounding her, retaliates with a furious challenge, asking Ralga how he dares do something so immoral outside the Colosseum, but he just leaps at her with a prosthetic arm, screaming, "This is revenge for my family, you see." Xiaoreng recoils, a golden aura flaring around her, and she deflects his attack with a powerful burst of energy, commanding him, "Don't touch," sending him flying backward. Ralga, however, recovers with a smirk, claiming this was as expected, as Xiaoreng snarls, warning him, "Don't mess with me." But then blood splatters and she recoils in shock, struck from behind by a blade as Ralga's spiked-hair minion grins maniacally, saying, "Ralga told you, right?" The minion calls Ralga boss, revealing a deep betrayal. He pulls the blade from her side, asserting that Xiaoreng's strong attachment to her kin is well known, and that she'd always been good to us, boss. A flashback shows a happier time, with Xiaoreng laughing amongst her tribe, who she considered family. The narration reveals she desired to recreate those bonds after her painful past, seeking revenge against the black dragon that destroyed everything. The Golden Mane tribe's descendants, like her, have strong attachments to their kin. Back in the present, Ralga sneers, telling her, "Let's quit this stupid family act," as a shadowy figure lunges at her, triggering a massive explosion of light and dark energy. Xiaoreng leaps away, but Ralga mocks her movement in the desert, shouting, "She sure is good at running away like a little rat." He then boasts that he has increased his power several times over, thanks to an abyssal entity. Our golden-maned girl unleashes golden lightning, and the two powers collide with immense force, as she performs a high-speed strike amidst a swirling vortex. Ralga lunges with dark claws, vowing, "I'll definitely win this time." He then smiles maniacally, bidding his boss farewell. He attacks with an aerial strike, manifesting dark energy as he declares his authority comes from an essence as well. Xiaoreng delivers a powerful blow, slamming Ralga into a desert rock face with explosive power, leaving him reeling and questioning, "Can I not overpower her?" He then looks toward the horizon and spots our black-haired count's son, and Evan observing the battle, with Evan confirming Alon is her benefactor. Ralga, despite his injuries, prepares to charge again, stating this is perfect timing since he has orders to follow. He then gleefully reveals that the poison he gave her is finally kicking in, as our golden-maned girl grips her side, groaning in pain. He grins, explaining the poison will last about an hour. He then mockingly clarifies that the authority granted by the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was what they wanted, and she simply had ownership and jurisdiction over it. Xiaoreng's face twists in distress, as a flashback shows her happily embraced by her tribe, thinking, "And we became family." But in the present, a one-eyed wolfkin man signals his followers, and a group of wolfkin warriors advance, weapons drawn. She looks on in shock, realizing that everyone else betrayed me too, as one of the traitors declares the essence ought to belong to someone more befitting. He reaches out to snatch a dark magical essence from the air, gleefully accepting it, when a massive wave of blue magical energy erupts across the desert, creating a shockwave. The wolfkin man looks back, surprised, as two mysterious figures stand firm on the ground. Alon, our reluctant patron, releases a powerful wave of magical energy. A wolfkin character looks on in shock, asking, "What is that?" As Alon calmly walks forward through the swirling dark magical energy, his face expressionless. Meanwhile, an image of an abyssal entity cube asks if anyone wants to become a god, promising divinity to the suitable absorber. Our calm benefactor has more pressing matters, pouring a high-tier healing potion onto our injured wolfkin girl, stating it looks like her guildmates betrayed her. He reassures her that those few were the only traitors, so she shouldn't worry, and she replies, "I hope so." Alon then insists that her guild is a happy place from what he's seen. Xiaoreng, emotional and hopeful, swallows nervously, then stands ready to fight, asking Alon if he can hold off the enemy until her spell is complete. Our golden-maned guardian crouches, yellow energy flaring, affirming that her family is indeed waiting for her. Alon stands amidst the clashing fighters, a golden gauntlet appearing on his arm, and a massive blue magical vortex begins to form above him as he states, "I only have one spell left." He stands calmly inside the swirling blue light, a large magical snowflake symbol appearing in the distance, a testament to the pen of the blind. Alon stands against a cliff, a huge ice crystal forming, and with a focused expression, he points his hand forward, manifesting a sigil for his painted halberd of ice crystals. He closes his eyes, ready to unleash his power. Alon's ultimate spell, the painted halberd of ice crystals, strikes one of the wolfkin traitors, who reels back as our ice-slinging noble commands the attack. The traitor staggers, engulfed in freezing ice magic, groaning, struggling against the sharp crystals that form around them. Trapped within a massive field of ice, the enemy manages a desperate lunge with a blade, screaming, "I just have to kill you," as they try to attack. Our black-haired mage maneuvers to block the incoming strike, thinking if he just gains control of the essence, but the enemy maniacally insists they'll be able to start anew. Suddenly, Xiaoreng, our loyal wolfkin, appears and blocks the blade for Alon, furious and demanding, "How dare you try to assault MY benefactor?" The attacking traitor looks on in shock, wondering who this benefactor is, as Alon coughs up blood, having been grazed by a stray purple knife during the chaos. Xiaoreng's face twists with rage, and she delivers a powerful kick, sending the traitor collapsing to the ground. Alon sits on the sand, recovering from his wound, letting out a phew, while an opponent, possibly Ralga, taunts him, claiming his father thinks he's an eyesore. Supported by Evan, our game-savvy survivor asks what that was all about, relieved by the fight's end, but also reminds himself of the abyssal entity's promise of divinity to suitable absorbers. Alon glows with magic, revealing his third restriction. When used against a god, his magic twists the laws of the world, making him stronger, as Xiaoreng stares intently at him, concerned. She asks why he didn't dodge, blaming herself for his injury, but Alon clarifies with a chibi-style thought bubble that he couldn't dodge and needed her to block. He then casually says it was a reflex to protect his daughter, and he didn't even realize the dagger would reach him. Flustered, Chibai Alon admits he made a mistake, and then Xiaoreng smiles, declaring, "I want to be family with you." Our reluctant patriarch finds himself staring at a note stuck to a wall that says, "Hang in there, Dad Xiaoreng," and a Chibai version of him exclaims, "Father," in embarrassment. Xiaoreng then explains that they can't be family like this, since she's golden mane and he's human. She leans in close to his face with a shocking proposal. "Let's get married." Alon and Evan react in disbelief, with Alon asking Evan, "Why?" Our black-haired mage wonders if she's really talking about marriage now, as she eagerly awaits his answer. Our eager proposer looks directly at the viewer, repeating, "Let's get married," with an intense grin. Our reluctant patriarch is stressed as Xiaoreng clings to him, wishing he had a skip button like in the game. Chibai Xiaoreng jumps happily, exclaiming, "Cuteness overload," but she insists that marriage will make them truly family, promising to make him happy. Tired Chibai Alon just wants sweet potatoes and a laid-back noble life, and so he agrees to answer her, next time, hoping she'll eventually give up if he leaves her be. As Alon and Evan depart in their carriage, Xiaoreng waves goodbye, then stands thoughtfully, realizing that simply gathering her tribe isn't happiness. Flashback shows her ideal family, even in life-or-death scenarios, would be one where they'd all believe in one another. She resolves to create a guard that can protect her benefactor, because that's how they'll be a happy family forever. He looks back with a gentle smile, determined. Back in the carriage, our reluctant patron looks thoughtful, while a shadowy entity speaks of orders to take care of other outer gods for what's to come. Alon rubs his face, letting out a phew, of exhaustion, and then in a library, a shadowy figure appears behind him, speaking of the tower search at the far east end of the stronghold of Kahara. Our black-haired mage examines an ancient stone slab, understanding its records of the past despite never seeing it before, and notices that the game's 5 great sins are referred to as outer gods here, while actual gods are metaphors, which confuses his game knowledge. The slab clarifies that outer gods are from people's faith or other worlds, while gods refer to the 5 great sins that existed from the beginning of time. This makes the slab's terminology a direct contradiction to his understanding of the game's lore. This keeps weighing on his mind, as a Chibai Alon wonders how someone got so strong in half a year, and if he can too. Alon and Evan look at a Chibai figure of a girl, acknowledging she's made it to a position of authority. Evan looks confused, scratching the back of his head. Alon looks on, distressed, as a cartoonish pirate king looms over him, saying he's gone from a Somalian pirate, leaving our reluctant patron frazzled. Meanwhile, our golden-maned girl smiles broadly, holding a glowing magical orb, which Alon and Evan stare at intently, wondering, is she declaring war on the boss herself, a dark-hooded woman with intense red eyes looking on, asking, what? Our wolf tribe hopeful is absolutely buzzing with excitement, watching a glowing crystal ball where she proudly declares her intentions to marry the great moon, and the pale-haired Yutia, our veiled cardinal, observes with a knowing smirk, barely holding back her amusement at the girl's tendency to exaggerate. Wolf tribe hopeful, still eager, innocently suggests that even shadows can marry, but Yutia quickly shuts her down, asserting that as shadows they cannot stand at his side, then questions if their benefactor would ever actually choose her, which prompts the girl to ask Alon directly, benefactor, do you really hate me? Only for our expressionless benefactor to state bluntly that, that's not it, leaving Yutia in visible shock. The wolf tribe girl recounts the story, concluding with a simple summary of what happened, while our expressionless benefactor looks down and dismisses the entire conversation with a single word. He then reflects internally on his past failure to properly assess an enemy's strength, and the beastkin girl, beaming with affection, happily resolves herself to her admirable benefactor, then claps her hands together in satisfaction. Yutia approaches our expressionless benefactor, telling him, anyway, as his crystal ball then reveals a miniature, ongoing argument between herself and the beastkin girl, a full-on, no, yes, battle, while elsewhere, Deus Macalian holds his head in frustration as he's explicitly told not to ask anything about the great moon. Our accidental magnet for chaos gestures dismissively, knowing he's not done yet with their squabbling, since his veiled cardinal is still showing her childlike demeanor. As the sun sets, our accidental magnet for chaos sits thoughtfully, letting out a big sigh of relief that for now, he's avoided any more of that particular drama. In a Capitol back alley at dusk, 2 cloaked figures discuss a plan involving a bunch of maniacs, while a very displeased Marquis Philboyd watches. Duke Rimgrave then proposes they'll bring in the Holy Kingdom of Rosario and use the Reformation letter against someone. The conspirators, having finished their discussions with cardinals, then toast to respond in kind then, sealing their malicious plan, while a lone man sits in a dimly lit church pew, unaware of the plot's unfolding. Smiling clerical man, addressing our veiled cardinal in a dimly lit cathedral, frankly asks Yutia to lend her name for a letter of reformation to Count Palatio, assuring her it wouldn't be a bad proposal. He then asks Cardinal Yutia, but she stares coldly back, repeating, a letter of reformation to bury Count Alon Palatio, and you want my name, as he explains they'll focus on the suspicious death of Cardinal Vientra. The clerical man smirks, dreaming of bribes and the gates of heaven, but then Yusha's dark magical tendrils erupt, restraining him as she asks, are you telling me to kill the man I worship? With a terrifying expression, she summons shadows, letting him scream in agony and warns him that no one will come. Dark shadows envelop the room, and the clerical man desperately begs Yutia to just kill me. But our shadow queen coldly replies she can't, blasting him against the floor like a ragdoll. He trembles in fear, pleading for it to stop, begging Yutia to just kill him instead. But our shadow queen stares intensely, declaring he must be punished amidst swirling shadows. 1 month later, under a bright sky, our black-haired count's son reviews a document, looking tired and unbothered as he explains to Evan that he normally would have thought differently. Evan then asks if he still has that letter, but our financially motivated lord is more interested in a pile of coins falling over documents, a legal wage, and the amount was far more than he could have expected, piling up into a vast mountain of gold. Our financially motivated lord, after questioning why anyone would bother with a position full of hardship, quickly understands that, with great power comes great responsibility, a lesson learned when his wounded soul is healed by the prospect of money, clutching his precious document in a grand hall, knowing this is great news for his fief's financial state. The Viridian Marquisate mansion stands illuminated at night, and inside, our black-haired count's son and Evan walk through a grand ballroom filled with guests, from warriors to merchants and even priests. A reluctant patron is stopped by 2 elegantly dressed noblewomen, asking him if he's, have you been well, making him visibly nervous and startled. Our reluctant patron, nervously standing at a buffet table, internally begs the noblewomen to leave, nervously thinking he's gotten tangled with underworld hotshots. As 2 more women approach him from behind, Evan arrives with some news. while Alon is mid-bite. Alon and Evan mid-meal notice a confrontation brewing between two elegantly dressed women. As Marquis Philboyd, a man at the top of the political world, bows his head in grim defeat, begging, "I've lost," and pleading, "Please, please spare me," leaving two shocked noblewomen in utter disbelief that the leader of the aristocratic faction, Marquis Philboyd, is humiliating himself like this. Black-haired Count's son calmly gazes forward, reflecting that unlike the underworld, the political world runs on cause and justification, earning intense admiration from onlookers who whisper. Even now, he remains calm, as he foresaw this all along. Meanwhile, far away, our wolf-tribe hopeful is panicking in an apron as her cooking pan erupts in flames like a miniature volcano, all in her earnest attempt to be a good wife. As our benevolent patron continues his accidental climb, a masked man in a suit and hat stands in a dark, fiery space, an ominous shadow in the background, signaling that new threats are always looming. Terrified nobleman grovels before our black-haired Count's son, completely distraught over a Reformation letter, and begging for his life, desperate to simply live out his days in peace. Other aristocratic women and a middle-aged nobleman watch on with concerned expressions, reflecting on a mysterious letter they received just days ago, one that looks uncomfortably similar to a dreaded Reformation letter. That mysterious letter came with a magic crystal that played a 5-second video, depicting Duke Rimgrave, who also received a Reformation letter, now tied up and screaming in terror, apologizing profusely for whatever he's accused of. The older nobleman clutches his letter, confused as to why Duke Rimgrave, who had no ties to heretics, faced such backlash, since a Reformation letter is only supposed to mark the political fall of those connected to them. Clutching his head in distress, he's convinced our accidental schemer is behind this, furious at his unknown connections, and dreads the terrifying thought that he is surely next. But our bewildered patron, standing calmly between two noblewomen at the banquet, is utterly confused, wondering why this man is begging him and musing if those two have been showing their true natures as the underworld masterminds of Asteria. The black-haired Count's son soon heads east for the magic conference, reflecting on how Marquis Philboyd was also dragged to the Holy Kingdom after receiving his own Reformation letter. Evan, his loyal knight, rounds on him, asking if our bewildered patron was the one who sent Philboyd, to which Alon, looking utterly exasperated, asks how he would even do that, just trying to get out of these absurd situations. Our accidental schemer is simply distressed and tired, looking like he hasn't slept in days, having only ever wanted to escape these absurd situations, but somehow keeps becoming the most dangerous person around. Arriving at Labyrinth City, Larthania, a sprawling metropolis known for its endless exploration and 5 peak guilds, our protagonist learns that their leaders are basically superhumans, capable of incredible feats. Deep within the labyrinth, a group of armored adventurers, including a smiling young man, descend to the 20th floor, where a woman in a purple cloak senses something is truly amiss. Pointing to a mysterious hooded figure, they mistakenly identify it as a weak goblin, gloating about how they'll double their advance payment, unaware of the menace in its voice as it dismisses them as bugs. The hooded figure, finding their boasting too noisy, makes a swift striking motion, releasing a blade of energy that instantly cuts down the lead adventurer, leaving his teammate looking back in terror. Adventurers leap through the air to evade the ongoing attacks, but another is violently struck by a blade of energy, as the powerful figure stands calmly while the ground shakes, revealed in a terrifying close-up as the king of starving demons. After witnessing the overwhelming power of what appears to be a demonic axe blade, our reputation magnate arrives at the conference, observing a towering white structure that he recognizes from the game's CG, comparing its height to Lot Tower, and is welcomed by Yutia, who offers to guide him inside. Lion confirms the conference begins tomorrow, allowing our black-haired Count's son a day of leisure, and Evan waves him off from the lounge, unable to enter the building himself. As our bewildered patron walks through the corridor, he notices the prideful blue-haired Vice Tower Master causing a commotion, challenging a group of men, and declaring that even 25th ranks can't win against her talents. But as soon as she spots our black-haired Count's son, her boastful demeanor collapses, and she shrinks away in anxiety, recalled how she got wiped out without being able to put up a fight during their last encounter. Our reputation magnate, with an utterly innocent expression, calmly asks if she's been well, which only intensifies her panic, making her wonder if this is some illusion magic before she bows deeply, profusely apologizing and pleading to get along. With a burst of quick disappearance magic, she vanishes in a flash, leaving our bewildered patron entirely puzzled, touching his neck and wondering what kind of misunderstanding she has about him, and if he did something wrong. Walking through a grand palace corridor, Alon and Yutia admire its astounding scale, until they encounter a broadly grinning blonde man entering through a doorway. As Alon observes with a nod, the blonde man in the purple cloak smiles at the red-haired woman standing nearby, confidently telling her that she will come to like him soon. Guided by the red-haired woman, our black-haired Count's son ascends to the 38th floor, where he finds a grand, magical library with books floating in the air. A sight so impressive it gives him a truly different vibe in person. With 2 secret tasks in mind, our accidental schemer adjusts a massive grandfather clock, announcing he'll be back when it's a full moon, before pulling a dark book from the floating shelves, which glows magically in his hand. Back outside, our bewildered patron and another man look shocked to hear that Alon Palatio has been challenged to a duel by Sir Baruch, leaving him utterly confused and asking what's going on now. In a sudden shift, 2 chibi characters explain how a special ring makes assessing rank easy, with one dismissing others by claiming they just can't compare to their innate senses. We jump straight into the action with a red-haired woman apologizing to Alon, explaining that some persistent suitor keeps harassing her for marriage. And it seems the drama isn't ending there, as a smug man in a purple cloak approaches our black-haired Count's son, with a smirk that promises trouble. This blonde mage, completely misunderstanding Alon's reputation, decides to use the inflated rumors about him as a stepping stone to his own fame, taunting Alon with a friendly match, asking if he's scared. Our protagonist, annoyed by the opponent's utter lack of decency, accepts the challenge, deciding to give this arrogant mage a very good reason to regret his words, and the duel begins in the grand arena. The blonde channels his purple magical energy into a staff, but then stares in confusion as a creeping cold begins to freeze his feet, rapidly encasing his legs in ice. Alon, meanwhile, stands intensely focused, gripping a dark, jagged magic artifact. While in the corridor, other mages are still buzzing about the outrageous rumors surrounding our black-haired Count's son, wondering who he truly is after seeing even Phineas apologize to him. The observers note Alon's energy doesn't seem high-ranked, and his mana reserves are small, but they sense something big is about to be revealed, and boy, are they in for a surprise. Violent ice magic swirls across the arena, as our magic-wielding master looks calmly forward, shocking the onlookers. He unleashes crystallization, manifested through a cosmic-like diagram, holding his artifact with an expressionless face, followed by rotation, as the celestial magic formation glows and spins, sending blue magical energy spiraling outwards. Alon's opponent struggles, completely overwhelmed, while the audience reacts with alarm, recognizing this as lethal magic from the purple magic tower, as ice explosions fill the arena, freezing his opponent solid, and the victory goes to Alon Palatio. Afterward, our magic-wielding master expresses surprise at how little the contemporary mages seem to know about ancient signs and chants, and quickly makes his escape from the bewildered crowd, leaning against a corridor wall, finally finding some peace and quiet. His black mechanical finger ring, Memories of the Black Eye, specializes in retaining and enhancing spells, amplifying his power, and he realizes that by using specific phrases with this artifact, which has the effect of freezing the surrounding air, he can manipulate the very laws of magic rather than just its characteristics, finally starting to truly understand his renown of a snow mountain. He then arrives at the 38th floor of a vast, magical library, greeted by an ethereal voice that commends him for solving its riddle, and our protagonist clears his throat nervously. The voice, surprised that Alon doesn't panic upon hearing it, reveals herself as the Eternal Fear, the Chalice of Beginnings, and Archmage Heinkel, the first mage to reach rank 8 after the Forgotten Era of the Gods. Archmage Heinkel, a blue-haired girl in a witch hat, floats amidst magical books, and Alon recalls that players call her the Retry Witch, because choosing the wrong dialogue option meant instant death, but that she gets friendlier after the 3rd try. She gestures aggressively, ready for Alon's response, but as our accidentally influential protagonist looks at her with a magical seal glowing below her, he observes something surprising. Having only seen her sitting down in the game, Alon realizes she's incredibly short, and her hat is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Heinkel, seemingly flustered by his observation, flails in the air and quickly offers him an item as a treasure chest floats toward him. Alon had prepared some magic just in case, channeling dark magical smoke through his ring, but finds there's no longer any danger, glad he got the item so easily, while Heinkel is left huddled in a ball, flanked by 2 magical eyes. Black-haired Count's son is stuck in class, taking part in discussions, and even though he looks utterly expressionless, he patiently answers a red-haired girl who just cannot believe he's really rank 3, asking him the same question 15 times. She nods, finally understanding that his mana capacity wouldn't cut it otherwise, and our quiet strategist internally reflects on this, looking up with his usual poker face. Evan then approaches our stoic young master with news. A new labyrinth has appeared about a week ago. Our protagonist immediately hands Evan a letter, ordering them to head out right away. As they prepare to leave, a blue-haired girl, Phineas, asks if he's really going already, gesturing emphatically and reassuring him that she absolutely knows he's a class 3. Our bewildered noble sits in his carriage, observing her wave goodbye, but notes she doesn't actually look sad he's leaving. He wonders what's up with her as the carriage travels along a bridge, heading towards the towering spires of Labyrinth City, Lartania. Soon he and a knight stand outside, talking as they approach the city. Entering a bustling courtyard, Alon overhears someone complaining about how quickly Rin is rising to power. He and Evan look up in surprise, watching a man in a green coat near a market stall dealing with an angry customer. The man in the green coat laughs hysterically, declaring this is already the 325th Karen he's had to deal with today, dismissing their threats about knowing his boss and demanding 3,000 gold for an unscheduled appointment. Our protagonist is shocked, exclaiming, "That much? That's the price of a whole mansion." He and Evan discuss the situation as the green-coated man reveals his next opening is in about 10 months. Alon and Evan react with further shock when they hear about the 10-month wait. Suddenly, a man throws a purple coin purse into the air, and a confident figure identified as Lavelled Greystone appears, flanked by 2 guards. The green-coated man curses under his breath about this bitch and fucking Nepo baby showing up again as a large metal gate begins to open. The gate swings wide, and a green-haired woman punches a man in a purple coat, sending him flying like a fastball. Evan and Alon watch in shock, barely registering her aggressive command for him to sod off. The green-haired woman then turns to Alon and Evan, calling out to Rin, her eyes narrowed as she stands before them. She lands another punch on the purple-coated man, ensuring he knows she means business. The green-haired woman then pivots to Alon, welcoming him with a surprising title. "I've been waiting for you, Godfather." Our bewildered noble looks utterly shocked as the purple-coated man is carried away, shouting accusations. Group of people confronts the man, who coughs and demands to know how they dare treat him this way, proclaiming his deep ties to the 3 councils and promising regret to anyone who turns their back on him for some peasant. The green-haired woman, Rin, simply invites Alon and Evan to come in. Alon and Evan exchange chibi-style looks of utter disbelief, with Evan asking, "Is this okay?" As they walk through a grand hall, Rin assures them not to worry, mentioning that her lord is obsessively doting on his child. Our stoic young master looks surprised as Rin glances back at him, and they settle into a grand lounge, with Alon wondering if he's sitting at the head again. Rin, tea in hand, looks directly at him, ready to listen. Cloaked figure eats a treat in the background as Alon observes the scene. Rin states that Godfather is the most fitting title for him. Alon sips his teacup, looking thoughtful, while Rin sits composed on the sofa. He lets out a small ahem, still processing everything. Alon sits, hand behind his neck, looking towards the green-haired woman. Rin speaks warmly, reassuring him not to worry and that she believes she can resolve his request. Our protagonist reacts with chibi-style surprise. Later, Rin waves goodbye to Alon and Evan as they head off for rest, noting they must be tired after their long trip. Our bewildered noble lets out a surprised whoa, and he and Evan in chibi form discuss how she was usually so curt. Under the dark night sky, a large iron gate stands, hinting at the secure estate. Alon blinks awake in bed as a servant asks if he will be eating lunch. Rin is already waiting for them at a long dining table, stating she'll wait. She sits eating, facing Alon. Alon looks surprised, fork and knife in hand. As they continue their meal, our protagonist sits, visibly shocked and confused, asking himself, "What did she just say?" He sits with hands clasped, pondering the implications of her words, thinking, "W8, isn't this like killing royalty? LAVALD? Why?" Images from the game lore flash in his mind, recalling how all of Lartania's subquests involved this. Rin sits calmly at the table, holding her fork, while our black-haired count's son realizes Rin was one of the seeds of the 5 great sins, concluding that even if she sees him as a godfather, this is excessive. She looks down with a serious expression, asking if this will be a problem and if she was inadequate. Chibi-style Rin reassures Alon that she made sure there were no loose ends. Our protagonist looks confused, a sweat drop forming, wondering if this is what it means to have completely different ways of thinking. Chibi Rin looks away with a grumpy expression. Later, Alon and Rin share another meal, with a servant nearby. Rin stands at the dining table, looking down with a serious expression. A magical effect glows with light, revealing an artifact. The Eye of Stalker artifact glows with intense energy, and Alon questions if this is it. He realizes he's been collecting imprints without issue, but now wonders if the thing that raises artifact power with a black imprint is truly the Eye of Stalker. Our protagonist is shocked, because as far as he knew, it was just a normal support artifact with no other functions, letting out an awe of realization. He looks confused, realizing Rin's fame is because of this artifact, which is why she was being so nice to him. The Eye of Stalker glows as text describes its collection process, slowing after 400 imprints, but predicting completion within a few years. Rin reports to Alon that she has finished her status report to him, Godfather, as the artifact glows behind them. Suddenly, a woman points at Alon, asking, "This straggly thing with US?" Mayan, the Maverick Guild leader of the Terra Nomad Guild, stands with her arms crossed, looking at a man. A bespectacled man and a woman with red horns stand side by side, looking serious. Black-haired woman with cat-like ears and tail swings her blades at Alon. Hand with a ring gestures, magical snowflakes swirling around it. And our bewildered noble, looking exhausted in a chibi reaction, realizes he has to earn their recognition after all. He then talks to a small man with an eye patch, noting how good his new something looks. Our calculating count's son stands in a frozen hall, thinking about his next move, because his 2 main reasons for joining this suppression unit were to gather powerful mercenaries, and to make sure they'd follow his plan. Our cautious noble, Alon Palatio, finds himself ready for battle. He turns to a group of armed mercenaries and asks flat out, "Weren't you the ONES that asked for this?" One of the mercs, looking utterly confused by the turn of events, asks if he messed up, though his expression is a nervous blank as he faces his predicament. Two armed figures confront him in a hall frozen solid by powerful magic, and our black-haired schemer explains that he only provoked them but Alon sits calmly in his chair, feigning nonchalance against the icy mercenaries. However, his intense gaze hints at something deeper. If Argonia acknowledges him, then there won't be a fight, begging her to just let it end here. Sharp reptilian green eye that suggests a dangerous secret beneath his polite facade. Knight points a sword directly at him, while a horned female figure, Argonia, stands by watching. A knight points his sword at Argonia, shouting about what she means, but then lowers his blade, annoyed, as massive icy formations appear behind her, signaling her formidable power. As our black-haired count's son suggests they meet tomorrow, and then leans against the wall, clutching his chest and swearing he's never doing something like that again. Argonia observes our noble intently in the frigid room, clearly in control of the situation because his heart is going crazy and he doesn't understand what Argonia means by saying she saved my life. Argonia explains that she doesn't fully grasp it either, but had the attack landed, it would have been like the consumer of class coming for them. Something her mother, a giant red dragon, warned her about hundreds of years ago. Argonia remembers her mother's words, "Never stand against the consumer of class." And Alon eventually stands beneath a giant glowing blue eye manifestation, having somehow navigated this perilous first encounter. A tired transmigrator, now in a meeting, realizes that even Mayan, who should be furious about being frozen, is quiet. Soon after, our determined leader is seen sitting around a large round table with a group of companions, likely plotting their next moves. He even reviews paperwork with a female companion, showing he's not just a fighter but a meticulous planner, which means his plan of using game knowledge was actually pretty good. Their journey takes them to a tall stone tower, an ominous landmark, and our leader moves confidently through its corridors with his companions. But their path is anything but peaceful, as a giant bird-like monster attacks Alon's party in a dark cavern, forcing them into a desperate fight. Later, as his party battles a giant bird-like monster in a cavern, our hero is thrown backward by a powerful gust, and thinks that he definitely couldn't have come here alone, despite the fact there's a mage item on the 40th floor. During their travels, a cat-eared companion poses playfully, finger to her lips, perhaps sharing a secret or a plan. Then Mayan, the cat-eared companion, asks Alon if he wants to make a kitten with her, saying something incredible like it was nothing. And our hero realizes that the cat tribe puts strength above all else, and that Mayan's heart skipped a beat when he overpowered her. Their journey is fraught with danger, evidenced by a powerful impact creating a crater with debris flying everywhere, followed by a bright energy explosion ripping through a rocky chamber. After the chaos, they find a small girl with a black and white tail sitting on the floor in a cave, accompanied by 3 standing figures, whose fate is now tied to theirs. A young man with blonde hair scratches his head in frustration, perhaps at the new developments or the path ahead. Our determined leader stands in a hallway with a companion, looking towards an unseen person, perhaps a new ally or enemy. Suddenly, Rin, the green-haired girl, gestures aggressively at Mayan, asking if she should silence her for saying such crude things to Godfather. He then looks down into a dark, deep pit from a stone walkway, contemplating the abyss below. Our thoughtful strategist stands deep in thought, clearly weighing heavy decisions about their dangerous path. After subjugating the boss and clearing floor 31, our hero notes that they've spent half a day just searching for the entrance. Their journey continues through a beautiful fantasy landscape under a bright sky, as the group walks through a lush green forest, seemingly peaceful but always on guard. But Argonia insists they continue to the 5th floor. They eventually stand before Argonia again, a group including a knight, who watches them calmly, suggesting a tense negotiation or renewed confrontation. Towering white marble columns reach toward a clear blue sky, hinting at an ancient or sacred location for their encounter. Exhausted, our black-haired schemer rests, as a knight looks on, confused. Dark, shadowy figure begins to form near a wounded person. Combat erupts once more, with a bright green light slashing through the frame, hitting a dark figure, and a powerful sword strike creates a massive vertical energy beam, striking another figure amidst the chaos. And then a bright green light slashes through the frame, hitting the figure. The mysterious figure, shrouded in swirling energy, points a finger upward and asks, "WHODARES? Look in my eyes without permission." Then sharp ice crystals erupt violently from the ground, filling the frame, and massive ice spikes continue to surge upward, indicating Argonia's formidable ice magic is in full effect. Ice crystals erupt from the ground as a knight warns a companion to get themselves together, and the mysterious figure is enveloped in a bright blue energy explosion. But then Argonia's voice cuts in, calling Alon a commendable bug for knowing her name. Our cautious noble, Alon Palatio, is seen with a determined expression on his face, ready for the ultimate showdown, and asking how he got there, because according to the report, it should have taken 3 days. The pointed-eared figure, Argonia, stands amidst swirling magical ice, her power at its peak. Argonia also notes that his incarnation state hasn't progressed much, as a hand grips a sword handle tightly, ready to unleash a devastating attack. As everyone prepares for combat against the powerful, pointed-eared figure who stands atop a crystal spire, warning that if they intend to drink poison, she will be happy to serve it with a glowing blade. With her threat ringing in their ears, a powerful impact hits the ground, causing debris to fly, signaling the start of the chaotic battle.